Everybody can acknowledge that, and then we'll get started here. Welcome, Bernice. Hoping you can hear us.
Yeah, I can hear you. Thanks.
Excellent. Thank you. Well, welcome to everyone to our, gosh, I don't know what number meeting this is. We're in the high 20s now somewhere, Melissa?
I think low 20s.
Low 20s. Okay.
We're on 21, not counting these supplemental meetings.
Okay, our mini meetings. All right. Thank you. So this is the meeting of the Doney Park Timberline Fernwood Area Plan Update Committee. We've been working now since January of last year on updating our area plan so that it accurately reflects what the citizens in our community want our community to be. And tonight we'll be focusing on one specific area, but we're going to start by doing some introductions, some updates and public comment. I'd like to start by introducing or having each of our, we're going to start with dinner. Thank you, Melissa. Free pizza for everyone there. I'm going to call each of the committee members out as I see your names, just so we can say hello and maybe a quick intro. Dave, you look like you're first on my list, so we'll start there.
Somehow I always get to be first, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Dave Browning, we moved here from someplace, Washington, I guess. So that was the last place I was in. About 15, 16 years ago. And we really like it. I think we picked a really good place.
Thanks, Dave. John?
Let's see, John Ruggles. I am a commissioner on the Planning and Zoning Commission for District 2. Been here in the Doney Park area for about 15 years, Arizona for a little over 50.
Excellent. Thank you. Harriet, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here. Harriet Young, I've been here since '91, political science at NAU, and longtime resident and very, very fond of this place.
Excellent. Brian?
This is Brian Bates. I'm, I don't know, around 40 years a resident. I was a career science educator at the community college as well as NAU and other schools. And I work as an occasional naturalist leading tours in the Southwest.
Thank you, Brian. Liz, welcome.
Hey, hi, Liz Baldwin here, nurse practitioner, District 4. Been here 27 years and on this committee since inception. I love about this place is open space, dark skies, quiet, and that's why I'm on this committee to preserve it and to save it as it is.
Thank you, Liz. Evelyn? There you are.
Right. Okay, Evelyn, I'm here. Or am I not?
Evelyn.
Here I am. Okay. Been here a long time. Here for District 2, and let's move on.
Excellent. Bernice?
Hi. Let me put my my video on. I don't know where I am on here.
We see you.
Oh, okay. There we go. Lots of people here today. Great. I see 25 people on here. I've been in Doney Park about 44 years, 43, 44 years. And I've lived in different places in Doney Park. I've lived out in Sunset Crater, Mountain View Ranchos, Cosnino. I've been in the place I am now at the base of the Turkey Hills for over 20 years. And I just love Flagstaff. And anyway, I really want to preserve it like it is. And I want to really thank the people that did the 2001 area plan, because it really did a lot to limit commercial and industrial and you know, a lot of expansion on smaller lots. I really like the big lot sizes. I like the acreage. I want to try to keep Doney Park just as it is, because once it's gone, it's gone. And there's just too much going on in other places that, even looking in our backyard in Flagstaff, I don't like what's going on in Flagstaff. All the huge development, even in other places like Belmont. They're having a lot of traffic problems now because of their expansion without the infrastructure. I'm really concerned about this area plan. It scares me to think of what we'd look at today if the 2001 plan had some of the things in it that we need to go back and address on this plan to make sure that we can have the best preservation that we can. Anyway, I raised my family here. I just want to keep it like it is. Thanks.
Thank you, Bernice. And she brings up a good point. Monica, who is on the river, but a member of our committee, was on the 2001 committee. So we all owe her some thanks, and we can see the plan that they drafted has been successful up to this point in keeping Doney. Let me see, I lost track of where I was here with, who have I missed?
Jim Clifford.
Members. I'm sorry?
Jim Clifford.
Oh yeah, Jim. There, yeah, his different name there. So
people always forget me, so that's fine.
Well, yours says Jaskell's iPhone, so I have an excuse.
I'm Jim Clifford, District 4 Planning and Zoning Commissioner, been in Doney Park for a lot of years, and glad to be on the committee.
Excellent, thank you. And I was negligent in introducing myself. I'm sorry, I'm Rob Wilson. I'm co-chair of the committee along with Brian Bates. I've lived here in Timberline for the last 13 years, in the Flagstaff area for about 21. And we have a couple of other guests I'd like to touch on here. Supervisor Vasquez, are you there, sir?
Yes, I am. Hello, everyone. How you doing? I just wanted to say thank you, all of you, for your participation and engagement in this process. It's been a really cool process to watch and listen. I learned a lot about the community out in Doney Park, Fernwood, Timberline areas. And so I just really appreciate the work that you're doing. Me personally, I've been living in Flagstaff for 31 years. Came in '89, went to middle school, high school here, and love Flagstaff. I've lived mostly in the urban areas, but I appreciate the rural character. And I understand the concerns about expansion and how to do it right. Like it's a fine dance, because there is going to be expansion. There's some of that we can't really control, but we can put limits on it and create a guideline for what the future looks like that's sustainable and win-win for everybody. And so, I really appreciate the time you're putting in, because as we saw from the previous area plan, what you put in is going to really be the guidebook and playbook for at least the next 10 years. And so that's really important. And then the other thing I really wanted to say is I wanted to highlight two of our members tonight. I wanted to appreciate Rob Wilson for testifying at the IRC public hearing. The message that we were putting to the IRC was basically to respect the rural character of the greater Flagstaff area, not to attach us to Phoenix, to the urban, but really respect that urban character. Really looking at different communities of interest, including the Doney Park, Fernwood, Timberline area, and then respecting the different diversities in our county, in our area when considering redistricting. And then also, so thank you, Rob, a great job. I appreciated your participation. And then I'd also like to recognize John Ruggles for being a distinguished citizen. Congratulations. I hope you saw my message in the chat when they were giving you your award, but I did get to see it live stream, and I was very pleased, and you were in good company. You've done good work, and it was cool to see you recognized. So thank you for that. So thank you, everyone. I'll be on the meeting tonight. I'm going to turn my camera off, but I am listening, and when I talk, I'll turn it back on. So thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Vasquez. Let's see, is Supervisor Begay have a representative here this evening? Guessing not. We have a couple other important guests that I'm going to quickly introduce for those of you that are just joining us. Jay Christelman, who's the director of the Community Development Department, is here. John Paxton from the Sheriff's Department is here. Melissa Shaw is our primary interface with the county. She's the senior planner that's helping us with this process. I think that's the majority. Jess McNeely is here with the county's planning community development department also. and it looks like most of the rest of us are community members. I would like to remind everyone, if you're not actually speaking at this point, it's a really good idea if you mute your microphone, because otherwise we're going to hear all the noise going on in the background. So if you're not speaking, it's a good idea to keep it muted so all the rest of us can hear a little bit better. So that is introductions. We're going to go from that to updates. Updates, we have two topics from the memo that Director Krisselman published a week or so ago. All the members of the committee have seen that. The first part of that memo addresses the words that we're using with respect to should, shall, or must. And based on the direction that the Community Development Department has received from the county supervisors, we are going to remain using the word should when we want that to be the case. Using shall and must was determined by them not to be the appropriate use of those words in this document. So we're going to follow that specific guidance from Director Krisselman. The second issue addressed in his letter was our original code of conduct that we all agreed on when we started this committee. There have been repeated violations of that by an individual who has been uninvited now. That individual will continue to have the opportunity to provide input to us. We'll continue to have access to the recorded meetings, but because of the behavior that was repeatedly warned against, won't be invited to the meetings anymore. As Supervisor Vasquez mentioned, our member John Ruggles received a very distinguished award because of his many years of service, not just on this committee, but also to the Planning and Zoning Commission here and down in the Valley. And John, I wish I could have been on that award ceremony thing for you, but that's a very cool thing and a very much well-deserved one. You're kind of the go-to guy for an awful lot of the technical answers here, and all of us appreciate the resources and the help that you've provided us here.
Rob, could I just interject real quickly about that?
Oh, sure.
And just to mention that, so the award was given by the Arizona chapter of the American Planning Association as Distinguished Citizen Planner, as Supervisor Vasquez made. So just so everybody knows, and I don't know that John had a chance to introduce himself, but he's our Distinguished Citizen Planner of the Year.
You still just get one vote, John, sorry.
Thank you.
And John and Dave, I also noticed some attendance stats here earlier today. John and Dave are the two that have been at every single one of these meetings. So great job to both of them for all their public commitment here to making this process work. And then finally, in the updates category here, Jess McNeely, who has been helping us with this process throughout the time we've been doing it, has decided he's going to quit. No, I'm just kidding. He's received an excellent job offer somewhere else and is continuing to advance his career. And we want to express our thanks to Jess for all of his wise guidance and help throughout this process, and wish him the very best of luck in his future endeavors.
Could I please make a comment?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, I've got the letter here that we got from Jay Krisselman about the area plan purpose and about using the different knowledge or the different language in the plans. And I really, after reading some of the judicial things that I've read, and also the 2001 area plan uses the word shall a lot. And his logic behind this in using the word should is that it makes the plan more flexible. And that scares me. We want this thing to be strong. We want it to be enforceable. If it goes to court, we want it to, if somebody's putting up something that they're not supposed to be putting up, or if somebody wants to put in a giant shopping mall or something like that. I'm really concerned because the labor is cheaper in the unincorporated areas of the county because we do not have the minimum wage that Flagstaff does, and it can be real attractive. But anyway, can I please finish? Just a moment. I'll just do this quick.
Here's the problem, Bernice, is this what you're doing is discussing an item that would have to be on the agenda for us to be able to address. It's not on the agenda.
Okay, can we put it on the next agenda?
Well, this has been on the agenda several times, and we have received what has been determined to be a final determination from the department director. So I don't know what the value of putting it on the agenda in the future would be at this point.
Well, I think we need further discussion as to why he wants to make this document more flexible for developers.
Okay, Bernice, when we wrap up this evening, if you still feel that way, we'll take a survey amongst the members of the committee and determine whether we need to have an agenda item to further discuss that. Is that fair? Okay, great.
Yes,
And
thank you.
sure.
I appreciate it.
Jess, did you have any parting comments before you leave us here hanging here?
Sorry, you guys were having that important discussion. Hey, I really appreciate. Oh, I got a camera. Thanks, Rob. I appreciate getting to work with you guys. Rob, it was great to work with you even before you were on the committee, but as a business owner and property owner who does great things in the community. So I appreciate the opportunity to get to work with this group and learn from this group. A couple key members like our distinguished citizen planner here that I've really learned a lot from. So appreciate all the opportunities, and I'll miss many things about the work I'm doing with Coconino County right now, but this is a really wonderful opportunity to work in a great place in the city of Sedona. So I will be starting to work with the city of Sedona at the end of the month. But great to work here. Great to work with Melissa, and she's doing all the work. I'm just here to support. So thanks, Rob.
Our pleasure, and thank you.
Rob, this is Brian Bates. May I ask Jess real quickly, could you share with us what your primary responsibility will be in Sedona?
Well, primarily, I do a lot of mountain biking in Sedona. But
can we join you?
Absolutely. I don't know if you want to do some of the writing I do, but no, I'll be the director of community development for the city of Sedona.
Excellent. They've gotten a good person. Thanks for all your work for the county, Jess.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
All righty. And I did miss a couple of folks here when I was doing the quick introductions. I apologize for that. Nick Hall, he is here with us this evening. He's the assistant county engineer. Nick, did you want to say hello?
Yep. Hello, everyone. Looking forward to being of whatever assistance I can be tonight. So any questions, please let me know.
Sure will. Thank you, Nick. And then we also have Kelly Bingham, who's a planner here with the county. Kelly, any thoughts to share?
Thank you, Rob. I've just been really enjoying listening to the concerns that everyone has for the community and learning more about Doney Park. So thank you for having me here and letting me serve you in community development.
Excellent. Thank you, Kelly. And especially important because of what we're talking about later tonight. Dave Wessel is here with us tonight from Metroplan. Dave?
Yeah, good evening, everybody. Glad to be here and looking forward to the discussion and being of assistance where I can. Thank you.
Excellent. So now we know everyone that's here, except all of you from the public that have joined us, which we very much appreciate. Your input to this process is a critical part of our success. And so we like to start the meetings with an opportunity from anyone from the public to share your thoughts with us here in this forum. Is there anyone from the public that would like to address the committee at this time? If so, go ahead and unmute and introduce yourself, please. It's awfully quiet. I was really hoping we'd have some great rousing new energetic thoughts to start this meeting off with. But apparently we don't. So we're going to move on from public comment to, let's see, Melissa, do we have a review of our meeting notes from the 8th and the 15th? Has everyone had a chance to review those? And does anyone from the committee have a comment regarding them? Because Jessica is in a bad mood tonight, so we have to be careful.
I have a comment. Is this for the second meeting or the first meeting that the 8th or what was the other meeting?
The 8th and the 15th of July.
Okay, the 15th was the last meeting that we met at, correct?
It was.
Okay, I don't, I've got a lot of information right here. Oh, here it is, here it is. On my comments, for the 15th, I believe. Let's find it. You know, I would hope that that more people will speak up on these meetings. And I know how hard it is for me. I can hardly unmute myself. It takes me a couple of minutes to do it. So at the end, could we please give people a little more time to make their comments?
Sure. Absolutely. And I will put out the call again right now because we haven't gone too far. If there's anyone from the public that would like to make a comment that might have had some muting problems, please feel free to speak up.
Right. On my comments, it said that I said before the open house, we should go over all the policies again and put with more input from the public and publicize the area plan process more. And the response was that the committee had already gone over the policies. Open houses will be a great opportunity for public input. I still think that I'm sorry, I didn't mean to unmute myself or unvideo myself. I still think that we need way more public input. I was reading the area plan for about the third time from 2001 and about how many public hearings that they had, even the individual committees for the different subjects like land use or safety. They all had public hearings, and it just doesn't seem like we're getting the input, and people just don't know about this. I even tried to get it put into the Arizona Daily Sun for in the community calendar, and I wasn't able to, and I used to put stuff like that in there all the time. And it's just really hard to get the word out. I've been putting it on Nextdoor and Doney Park Facebook, but they don't have a lot of people. And people have been telling me that they have to work so that we start our meetings so early that they can't participate. And I just think there's a lot of people that don't know what's going on, and we really need to get the word out.
And Bernice, do you have specific comments relating to the minutes from those two meetings?
Yes, I would like to add that I felt like we weren't getting enough public comment and that we were too rushed.
Okay.
And that we need to go back over the documents that we went through before. You know, it just seems like there were some changes. I started thinking about how now we're allowing sex offenders into the neighborhoods. And that really, you know, things like that, we really need to go back and look at. And by some of the things that weren't allowed in the 2001 plan, I really think that the 2001 plan is a lot more protective. There was a lot of things taken out about health and safety and things like that, that I think we ought to take a look at and possibly put back in with commercial and industrial use.
Bernice, we're really looking for specific comments about the accuracy of the minutes from the last two meetings.
Okay, I want to add that we went too fast. I feel rushed.
That was in the minutes, isn't it?
No.
Okay.
And I feel like we need more public input, and we need to go back and look at some of these policies and compare them to the 2001, because I thought when we got our working documents, that was the 2001 plan, and we were just like looking at it, but there were things that were missing in the working documents that were in the 2001 plan that were
Each of the committees, Bernice, had an opportunity to review the 2001 plan, and then the document.
We all did. I mean, it's no fault but my own, but I didn't realize that when I got my working documents that didn't include the whole 2001 plan.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Bernice, if I could just clarify that all of the Word documents have all of the 2001 goals and policies, but when I send the PDFs, it's far too messy to read. So I turn those to a different view, but we can talk about that maybe at the end of the meeting in terms of if you want the delivery in a different way.
Well, I just, I would like to go back because there were a lot of things like not having, there were no convicted felon halfway houses allowed in the neighborhoods. And after talking to people, I just, that includes sex offenders. And I really think we need to go back and make sure what we're doing, even the development, we talked about not allowing a domino effect for commercial development.
So
and
Bernice,
industrial development, but now
we're really looking for
this. It's in there.
We're really looking for specific comments relating to the minutes from the last meeting. And what
Okay.
I've heard is
Last meeting, I commented that we're going too fast. We need to go back. We need to look at what we've done and check our work.
Right. And you'd like that included in the minutes?
Yes, please.
Okay.
Yes.
I'm sure we can
Got
make
it.
that happen.
Thank you. And Melissa assured me that we're not done and we can do that. So I appreciate that, Melissa, that you told me that, because I lose sleep at night about that. And a lot of my neighbors are really upset about it. And a lot of people I know in their organizations that live out here, we're just really concerned about our homes.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Bernice. So Jessica, or Melissa, we can make those updates to the July 15th meeting notes. Is that correct?
Yes, we can update the July 15th and then send them back for a second review.
Okay.
Did you want to ask
Or-
about July 8th?
I don't know that we need to send them back for a second review unless any members of the committee object to Bernice's 2 comments being included in the July 15th meeting notes. I think we can go ahead and do that and approve them. Does anyone have an objection to that?
I just feel that we've heard this many times, and it looks like it's getting into something where maybe it'll happen. But I've just heard it over and over and over, and I'd rather move on.
So,
Go ahead, Jim.
oops, I'm sorry.
Jim, did you have a comment? I guess not.
No, no, and I'm sorry, I bumped my phone.
No problem. Harriet, you're waving your hand. Do you have a comment? You're muted if you do.
No, sorry, trying to get the phone in a
Okay.
place I can see it. Sorry,
All right.
my
We wanna-
computer died. It
We
just
want to be
died.
as inclusive as we can here, make sure we don't miss anything. So,
Thank
all
you.
right. So I heard no objections. I guess we'll take a quick vote. Does everyone on the committee agree that with the 2 modifications suggested by Bernice, that the meeting notes from the July 8th and 15th meetings are good to go? All in favor, say aye.
Excuse me.
Aye.
Could I see the language that's going to be on there? We're voting on something we don't even know what it says.
Well, Bernice, we've got this being recorded. So we heard exactly what you said, and what you said, if you would like, can be verbatim incorporated into the notes, if that would satisfy your needs.
Yes, I appreciate it.
Okay. So I will ask again for all of those in favor of the committee members, all those of you in favor of the meeting minutes being approved with the 2 modifications suggested by Bernice, say aye.
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 Any opposed? All right, we're going to assume those meeting minutes are good to go with the 2 modifications as defined by Bernice. And that will bring us up to the review of the draft transportation circulation plan vision statement.
Rob, weren't we supposed to, this is Evelyn.
Yep.
Weren't we supposed to approve 2 notes or two different?
I included the 8th and the 15th.
Okay,
in my,
okay. I'm sorry, didn't hear you.
Is everyone, and did anyone misunderstand that and not mean to approve both the 8th and the 15th? Okay. Good. Then we can go ahead and move on here with the draft vision statement for our transportation system here in Doney Park. And Melissa, if you would do us the honors of reading that statement for us, please, for those on the phone could hear it.
Sure. It reads, the transportation system in Doney Park, Timberline, Fernwood integrates and connects multimodal facilities for transit, pedestrian, bicycle, and equestrian users throughout and beyond the planning area. Our future envisions transportation corridors that are safe and accessible for wildlife, motorists, and all non-motorized users. Enhanced opportunities for transit and commuter options are possible at key locations throughout the planning area.
All right, so we'd already reviewed and approved that as our vision. Now we're going to go into the more detailed parts of our transportation plan, which is the goals and the policies. This is a list of studies and surveys and inputs that we're using to inform this process. Anything that you wanted to add on that, Melissa?
I would, and just to have everyone take a look at the list here. And so the goals and policies that we're looking at are a revision of the 2001 area plan goals and policies. We're also looking at the multimodal study from 2011, the survey that you all did with this planning process, and with that updating the circulation map and have put together this new multimodal trails and transit map that we've looked at in the past. I'd also like to mention that Nick Hall, our assistant county engineer, and Dave Wessel, planning manager of Metro Plan, they took it on themselves to do a drive around or a drive about and came up with some specific ideas that we're going to be talking about later. But I did want to give Dave and or Nick an opportunity just to mention what some of those, how that came about and what we might look for in the next meeting. I don't think we'll be able to get to that today. So Dave or Nick, if you wanted to take a moment just to explain how that evolved.
Yeah, this is Dave. So, this is a plan looking into the future. We have our existing road network, and Nick and I were interested to see if we thought there were improvements to the network that might be needed for a variety of purposes. Some of those might be emergency evacuation, for instance, which has come up once or twice. So we took a tour of the area with that in mind and came up with a series of recommendations for taking some private roads and perhaps making them public roads and bringing them up to standard, and for some trail connections, and maybe simply some emergency access easements that could be gated except for times of emergency evacuation. So look forward to sharing those with you at a later date. And at this point, I'll see if Nick has anything he'd like to add.
Thank you, Dave. And really just echoing what Dave said already. And I think, we all know the area well enough that there's so many communities that have, one access in and out from the state highway. Really just a huge concern for any emergency issue. And I think most people here have dealt with at least once or twice recently in the year of just being cut off by an accident or something, and potentially worse, that we want to see about having that emergency access, having alternate routes through the area. And then part of the tour too with Dave was just kind of looking at that, this area is very unique. It has its character. That's why there is this area plan, that this is not other places in the county, that other solutions elsewhere are really not the prime thing to jump to for here. So really just trying to see, what is the character out here we're aiming for and preserving, and what are those best options for moving forward. So it is really beneficial. I think we have some neat ideas for the future and just want to kind of help and work with this area plan to achieve those goals together.
Thanks very much to both of you for taking the time to do that and just taking the initiative to go out on your own and spending a day. So we really appreciate that. And I know that we'll bring it back to the committee. So I think that was the update there.
Right.
Rob.
So I think we now move into the actual goals and policies.
I will stop share and bring up the document.
Can I say a comment, please?
Yes, sir.
This is, Supervisor Vasquez. I just want to let you know, first of all, I appreciate all the conversation. I appreciate the concern about the rush. I know COVID made things a little awkward and weird. However, I do feel that the members that have put in the effort and time have put in with good faith and have put in a lot of energy, and we're so close to that point where we're going to have the public comment and opportunity to go back and reflect. And so I just wanted to suggest to the members to please, don't get stuck on language right now. Get the big vision. I thought earlier the mention of Belmont was really important for this conversation, because that was a situation where building happened without pre-planning infrastructure vision. And what you're doing right now with the transportation is that vision for the future. What's the roads going to look like in 20 years when there is some kind of growth? Maybe not in your particular neighborhood, but in the greater Flagstaff area, and how's that going to impact the Doney Park, Fernwood, Timberline area? So I just really would like to suggest that we really focus on getting what that vision looks like and don't get stuck in the minute details of the language, because it has to go through public comment before it can even get to a vote. So there will be opportunity. So I highly suggest that instead of trying to go back and starting over and going through this whole process, let's finish what we have, present what we have to the community, and then from there, that's when we can really be nitpicky and decide, okay, this doesn't work, that doesn't work. Because I agree, just going through it, I've seen some things that I'm like, wow, I didn't realize that was there. It would be nice to go back. But I think it's very crucial for this committee to finish this first draft, and then we go forward. This is not the final product. This is only the first draft. So I just wanted to throw that in there in this conversation, because I really appreciate your guys' work and what you're doing. And sometimes when we get stuck on the language specifics, we're tying down the process, and that the feedback, the nitpicky final draft stuff, that's in the process, but it's later on. We got to get done with the first draft first. So I didn't mean to get on it and pontificate or anything like that, but I just wanted to throw that in there and just let you know that I'm in support of going back and reviewing what's been done. I just would really like to see the draft done first and have public comment, and then go back and nitpick on the details. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Supervisor Vasquez. All right, so Melissa, if let's see, you're sharing your screen. That looks like it's going to be, can everyone read that okay?
Larger.
All right.
Tell me when, is that too?
That's probably good right there, I think, for most people.
Okay, so I'll go down to where we left off.
And while she's doing that, I'll just give those of you that might be new to this process, we have a vision, and then underneath that vision, we have the goals and policies on how we hope to implement that. So that is what we're going through right now, is picking up where we left off after the last meeting on the goals and policies associated with achieving that vision that we just covered. And Melissa, we left off at?
So we left off on TC 11.
Right.
And there was a note on TC 10 above that these words "and implement," what they were added to that goal, to that policy rather. So I can go back if you'd like. We can look at the goal that complements these policies to start to begin this section.
Well, did we finish TC 11, right?
We had ended there, correct?
And so why would we need to go back?
These words "and implement" were suggested to be added to number 10.
By whom and when?
Just in reviewing the draft after having different conversations and reading policies going in the future, I thought that it would be important to update that. So that was something for the committee to look at. It has to do with the 2011 Doney Park multimodal study. So that was a suggestion. It doesn't have to go in there.
I was under the impression that once the committee had reviewed an item on this list and moved on past it, that's what we had done, and that there would not be changes to it unless we as a committee had directed.
Okay, we can do that. That's why it's highlighted for that consideration.
Okay, because I think we need to have confidence that what we saw when we last approved something is that, and that there isn't any other editing going on after the fact. I recognize you're trying to tell us this happened here. But
Right.
if you didn't feel it was necessary at the time, I don't know that we need to revisit it now,
Okay.
unless someone has a strong feeling otherwise.
Well, I was just thinking, I think I wrote notes on mine. This is Liz. And I remember I wrote notes, someone suggested because it says to update it. What good is updating something if you don't implement it? So that's why, and I can't remember if it was John Ruggles. I don't remember if it was me. I don't know if it was, I don't know, but I remember because I have it wrote down, add, to be clear. So I thought it was update and implement. And another one that I saw that I wrote on my notes was above it, we were going to talk about in E, TC9E, and if people don't want to put it in, that's fine too. But it talks about we don't have a standard for trails. And so we were going to use the standards or best practices of permit requirements of relevant permitting agencies. And I thought that was unclear to me. And I thought I wrote notes that we were going to put this in it. Example, Forest Service. We were going to use and it says example TC16, which is coming up. And so both of those things I have written in my notes that we were going to put that in. And so we can vote on it right now if we're going to put that implement, because what is good is updating something if you don't implement TC10. You update it. Okay, let's update it, but we're not going to, we update it, we need a stoplight there. Okay, but we're not going to implement it, so why even update it? And then TC9E, at the end of that, I wanted an example, because to me, when we were reading over it, at the last part of it, such trails will follow design standards of or best practices and permit requirements of relevant permitting agencies. And what we're going to use in this document that we said later on would be the Forest Service. And I said example TC16, so people can refer to it and go, well, what do you mean relevant permitting agencies? You know, the Doney Park area plan or who? And we were going to use Forest Service, but I don't know if no one remembers that. I guess we'll just take a vote on it at the open. I don't know, but those two things I did mark on my paper.
Rob, this is Brian. May I comment?
Sure, please.
Thank you, Rob. Liz, I do recall that conversation.
Yes, sir.
First, relevant to TC9E.
Yes, sir.
To have a reference to those agencies.
Yes.
Somebody would understand the context.
Yes, sir.
Second, for TC10, I agree with you. You made the comment exactly as I would have. First, you update, you get the information. Once you have the information, you use that information to accomplish the goal. Therefore, I think to and implement is necessary in TC10. End of my comments.
So do we vote that we put both of those things in there? An example like in TC16 Forest Service and the implement, what's the parliamentary procedure on that, Melissa?
Well, I hope we're not following parliamentary procedure, because we're in deep trouble for all of that.
Well, whatever procedure, I don't know, Doney Park procedure, I would just say.
That's a good way to say it, I think. Doney
It's
Park
a committee
procedure.
decision at this point.
Committee decision.
All right, so what I've heard is a couple of the members of the committee would like to add a couple of words to item 9 Echo and 10, I'm sorry, TC10. So unless any members of our committee oppose that, I would suggest we go ahead and make those modifications at this point and then move on. So does anyone oppose making the modifications as defined by Liz and Brian just now? Okay, so Melissa, you've probably got that in your notes. I don't know if we have to do it. Well, we should do it real time. Let's go ahead and do that. So item Echo there, we're going to add, as Liz mentioned.
Excuse me.
Yes,
I'm
ma'am.
sorry, I'm having trouble with my computer. I know there were a lot of people in favor and opposing the Doney Park multimodal study. And that was why it wasn't implemented before, wasn't it? Because of all the community input?
No,
I thought it had to do with funding.
not implemented because there was no money to do it.
Right, no funding.
Oh,
Yeah, that's it.
I heard a lot of people talking about they didn't like it, and I was wondering, I think there ought to be some public hearings, you know, updating it and making sure there's plenty of community input. You know, I'm not in favor of voting to say that we'll implement it. I haven't even read the thing myself. Has everybody else on the committee read it?
Yeah. Yes, what you're talking about here is actually
I have.
implement study.
Is
Find the
that-
money and implement the study. That's what you want to do.
Right.
So
but
Bernice, what this study
has-
does, what this study would do was seek new public comment on the existing 2011 plan, just like what we're doing here to update our area plan. And then once that new community input is received, go ahead and work on implementing that. That's the intent behind this statement.
Okay,
So
and with
reading the one that's currently exists really wouldn't have a lot of merit because we would expect it to change as a result of the update.
okay.
You want to read the policy, Rob? I can read it for people that are on the phone.
Oh, that would be great. Is it
Sure.
short enough to read?
Yeah, I mean, it's the one that's highlighted if you can see a screen, but it reads, the county should seek funding and community input to update and implement the 2011 Doney Park multimodal study.
Okay, I just feel uncomfortable recommending that something be implemented that I haven't read.
But it says to seek community input as
It's-
part of the policy.
You can't
Well-
read it, Bernice, because it doesn't exist. It's something that needs to be updated and then implemented.
Okay, so it's like a working document that's not finalized.
No, it's an old document that needs to be updated because it's
Okay.
10 years old right now, just like our area plan needed to be updated.
Okay, just like implementing our area plan once we get it, go through
Yeah.
public comment and all. Okay, I
ma'am.
understand that, but I still feel uncomfortable voting for something.
Okay.
You know, I just have heard that there was a lot of comments on both sides that we need to address, but it sounds like, I don't know,
And Bernice, you're welcome to say nay. If you would prefer not to vote for or abstain, you're welcome to do that. That's not a problem.
okay, but I haven't read it, so I don't know if I'm for it or against it, so I'll just abstain.
Okay.
Okay.
Do we have any objections to the change on TC10 as is been documented here?
This is one of the things that we can go back to, right? Like
We can-
Supervisor Vasquez says that we can go back and tweak it later.
After the open houses where we receive public input, we can go back and change anything that we want. Yes,
Okay, wonderful. Thank you, Rob.
that's
I really appreciate that.
been the case since the beginning.
That's
So-
not what I was told.
And then 9 Echo, we needed to also modify slightly. Liz, did you have those words still handy?
Sorry, I'm unmuted. Yes, the example that we're going to do, I thought was we could just put example TC 16 because we address who we're going to use as our standards in TC 16.
I
Okay,
can
so just
scroll
a-
there.
Just a
Or we can,
footnote saying CTC
Sure.
16.
right.
See,
Okay.
okay.
Oh, it got changed, Melissa. Didn't it get, wait a minute, Liz. Oh, no, it's still there. Because I know we put the thing about accessibility in there and it got changed TC 17. But yeah, TC 16 does say, 16. Do you want me to read it? Or did you file it up there?
No.
Because it just says county should develop trail standards and classification systems for throughout the county. Until such trail systems are available, current best standards such as the Forest Service design standards should be referenced to inform trail design. And the reason why we picked that was because the Forest Service does have a standard, and Trails Initiative, which is doing a lot of the studies out here for our trails, they follow the Forest Service as well. They haven't gotten a standard either. And so they're using Forest Service standards. And so that's why we wanted some kind of trail system to get a standard till we come up with our own.
Okay.
And that's what we thought would be best. And that's what we discussed last time. Like, well, let's use the example of what standard would we use? Well, we talk about it in TC 16. And we could put Forest Service, example, TC 16 Forest Service. We could say that as well.
Does that work
Well-
as it is where it just says CTC 16?
Yeah, for me it does. And then people will say, oh yeah, that's the standard. Oh, it's the Forest Service. Yeah, for me.
Okay. Liz, I don't know if you know, but we're only seeing the very top of your head. And
Well, you know what? I can't even see me. I thought I was muted off. Help me. How do I get my head on there? Because I see no one. I see everyone's muted. So I don't know. It's a technical thing on my end. But
It's
I
your
want to be
camera.
part of the party.
Moving on. So we have made a minor change to TC9 Echo, adding the CTC 16. Are any of the committee members objecting to that change? Hearing none, we're going to move on and start making progress on new work tonight.
Okay, so the next section is public transportation, transit, and trails planning. And I can read the goal. The public transportation transit goal is convenient and accessible public transportation and transit options are available throughout the Doney Park, Timberline, Fernwood planning area.
Any additions or objections to the goal? Moving on.
So the first policy under that goal would be number 12. Public transit and park and ride opportunities should be located in the rural activity centers as detailed in the 2011 Doney Park multimodal study. And I could just speak to that for a bit. In that multimodal study, there was research done to locate certain places in the rural activity centers that might be convenient locations for park and ride parking spots, basically. As we know, we heard from NAPTA and we got an update from Busy Collins that having public transit in Doney Park is a long stretch. There doesn't seem to be any immediate opportunities in the immediate future to bring that to Doney Park, but there would be opportunities for park and ride.
But what this is
places.
saying, though, is if those opportunities do present themselves in the future, they should be in the rural activity centers.
Right, and that tracks with the research that was done with that multimodal study.
Okay. Any objections from any committee members to TC 12? Moving on to TC 13.
13, to encourage public transportation options, the county is urged to engage in NAPTA's 5-year planning process to explore options that provide public transportation service for the Doney Park, Timberline, Fernwood area. And just as a little bit of background, you all may remember that Busy was talking about their process. They are actually have just started that process this summer. So they are updating their 5-year planning process. They're beginning the process to update their 5-year transit plan. And that's a public process that the community could be involved with.
Any objections to TC 13 as worded? Moving on.
Number 14, the county should coordinate efforts with NAPTA to provide educational information to the public about existing and future transit options such as rideshare and carpool, vanpool, microtransit, and connections to Mountain Line.
I'm not clear what microtransit means in this case.
Right, Busy did talk about that a bit, and I guess it's and Dave or Nick, feel free to jump in. But that's I think a newer term that is in the transportation world, and it is just kind of what it implies. It's small vans that would, I believe it would be in this case vans that would be used in lieu of buses to service much smaller areas and bring people in smaller numbers rather than fund an entire large Mountain Line bus, for instance.
If it follows Vanpool, what's the difference between it and Vanpool?
I believe
This is Dave. If I could, I'm sorry for interrupting.
No, please.
So where Vanpool, there is a vehicle assigned to an individual, and then they have kind of members subscribe to that van, and they coordinate. In microtransit, so maybe I can just give you the specific example that they're working on now, and then you can extrapolate to other areas. So they're looking at that area of industrial drive between the tracks and the interstate, where there's a lot of human service organizations, the food bank, the shelter, that doesn't have bus access. And so they will use their paratransit vehicles and use them almost like an Uber and Lyft, where when those vehicles are not in service on a typical paratransit ride, they're available to go pick up an individual who was contact them through an app and then take them to a destination within a zone nearby or to a nearby transit stop where they could then access the larger transit system. And so that's the model they're using now. In other places, they would actually include taxis, Uber, Lyft, volunteers,
Okay.
and others to get service to an area. So that's microtransit.
That helps me understand a lot of the difference between, and so now I understand that. I think as a minimum, we need to make sure that microtransit is included in our glossary with a definition from someone.
And that's why it's capitalized. I do believe we have a definition, and I can pull that up if you'd like to see it.
Okay.
So Melissa, help me out here. Does the capitalization mean it's in the glossary, or is that a specific term, like a noun, a proper noun?
No, the format that we've used in the most recent area plans is to capitalize and eventually then highlight the glossary terms throughout the document. So when a reader would know then that it's in the glossary.
Thank you for reminding me.
Wow. Okay. Any additional comments or input on TC 14 from the committee? Moving on to TC 15.
Okay.
Wait, my question, this is Liz, and I just want to make sure, does everyone understand there's a difference between carpool and ride share? That's a real big one. And I don't know, we don't have that in the glossary, do we, Melissa? No.
No, those were not highlighted, or rather not capitalized.
Yeah, because rideshare is a really groovy program. They're doing it in Flagstaff. They haven't done it out here. They said, I think there's one going out there, and that's where people, does everyone on the committee understand what rideshare is? It's very different than carpooling. It's you receive a car from the county, and you have to have 4 people that agree to this. They all have to have good driving records. They all take turns driving, and they give you a car. And I believe they give you gas money, and you share this ride. It's pretty incredible that they would even consider that. And I know it's going on in Flagstaff Metro, isn't it, Dave? But I don't think it's hit here yet. I heard a rumor there was one, but I think that she got misconfused that because it was going on in Flagstaff. Dave, can you address that? Because I think maybe we should have this in the glossary, because I think it's such a beautiful concept, rideshare.
So Liz, what you just described is what I believe, or what I thought was a vanpool.
No.
Right, so perhaps all of these need to be.
I think so too. And we've been working on this so much that I just forget that we need education, but that's listed one of these things. So we have to reach out when all this is available to educate the community what's out here, because it's amazing, rideshare and vanpool. Yeah.
So Dave, could you do us a favor then, and before we move past this, define the difference between rideshare and vanpool for folks like me who don't understand?
So I believe there's sometimes it's called car share, and there's like a car club almost.
Right.
Where,
yep.
There's a pool of vehicles, and it's almost like a subscription rental car,
right,
or a subscription or a car share co-op, where there would be a single car or multiple cars, and you belong to this club, and you get to use that car. You sign up for the car when you need it. It gets scheduled,
gotcha,
and it's available for you.
An advanced version of the scooters downtown kind of concept.
An advanced version or large scale version, however you want to look at that. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Good enough. So I think
definitions need to be included in the glossary. Yeah. Yeah. Thank you. That's
all right.
Obvious. Yep.
Am I hearing that you wanted
Yes.
rideshare, carpool, and vanpool defined?
Yes. Excellent. Now we're ready to move on to TC 15. Melissa, please.
Okay, In the event that school district policy permits non-students to ride on school buses, the county and transit providers could explore the feasibility of developing a cooperative agreement with the Flagstaff Unified School District Number 1 for providing public transportation into the city of Flagstaff. Empty buses that leave and return to Cromer School each day could be used to provide transit, or public transportation could be utilized to support school bus service. I did want to give a little bit of background to this. This was one of the existing policies, and there are examples around the country, I believe, where this is working. Currently, FUSD does not allow non-students to ride on buses, and it seems like it could be a stretch if this would ever actually be possible. But it was an idea that came out of our presentation from Mountain Line. So we left it in here, but it may not be realistic.
So this is a new.
I'm sorry, it is a new policy, yes.
Okay.
I have a question, Melissa. This is Brian. Has there been any discussion with the Flagstaff Unified School District about this policy?
Yes, they reviewed it, and they were the ones that Bob Kuhn, if you recall, he talked to our group. He, indicated that this would not be possible at this time. It may be in the future, but we're not sure, when or if the policy would ever change in relation to non-students riding buses. It's a nice idea to think about empty buses being.
I know, what a recycling effort, going back and carrying people in, but wasn't it about liability, Melissa?
I'm sure it has to do with a lot of things, yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
I wonder if having it being this specific is beneficial, or if it could be reformatted to say that, all forms of transportation that could be beneficial should be, explored. This is a great, unique kind of idea, but are there others out there too? And shouldn't we endorse all of them?
Well, bring it on. Bring it on if it is.
Rob, I think you articulated the point that we need to make. Because I think my personal opinion is that this is too specific, and I don't see it happening within the next 10 years and probably not even within 20 years.
Right.
Why do you don't think that's so feasible, Brian? Why?
I just don't see the Flagstaff Unified School District taking on the liability.
This is.
I think that Rob has articulated this very simply.
Yep.
And very coherently in as few words possible to get the point across. And I would have to agree with what he and Brian are both saying about TC 15.
So how do we reword it then? Or we'll just work on it. We can do it on and then present it to you guys again. Yeah.
I think I heard Bernice.
I agree with that, but I think the way you have it worded in the event, that's kind of saying, well, if it happens, here's a policy for it. And if it doesn't happen, that's okay too. It's just like future planning. I kind of agree with both. I think having worked for the school district for quite a long time and knowing some of the problems that they've had with the buses, with just the students on them, I think it's going to have to be very tightly monitored. We would get all kinds of problems. It would create a more liability for the school district, definitely.
And Bernice, that's kind of my point here, is rather than limiting this just to school buses, let's say that all alternative forms of transportation that could benefit the community should be explored. So, something more broad and supportive.
Yeah, that is exactly what I would sign up for. I agree with Rob completely. Simple and to the point.
Same here.
But it's a beautiful idea.
It is a good idea, but
well,
that's why I wanted to keep it in. I thought it was so beautiful. What a recycling way. Buses come in and they're used right when they come back instead of an empty bus going to town. But
right, but doesn't Rob's statement cover that also?
Yes.
It does.
Yeah, this and others, yeah.
Liz, I have a solution for that. We put kids on shift work. So you pick up one shift and bring the other shift home.
Anything to make those buses full all the time. I think
Yeah,
it's
there
such
you
a
go.
waste.
I'll fill your buses for you.
And I agree that that this does include it, and we want to just pick one and say this is one you should support. You know, there's other ways to do good things.
Right, we just got to make sure that we don't forget this idea because I think it's so groovy. I mean, I just love the bus thing. And just saying alternative forms, I hope we don't forget this beautiful idea, but maybe we can put in the back files, Melissa. I don't know.
Well, I
This
think
is
there'll be
Evelyn.
enough people here that like this idea that they will speak up.
This is Evelyn. I think that keeping it the way Rob just put it is a good thing, and to just kind of not specifically put the school buses, just because of this day and age. It seems like the vulnerable are always the ones that get the attack. And I think that as a parent, if I had small kids going to school, I don't think I would be real excited about my kids coming home after some adults have been on it. Who knows who adults are? And this day and age, I would not want my child to be on a bus after people have been on it, unless, of course, you get, dogs checking it and all kinds of security and stuff like this, because then you're putting a bunch of vulnerable kids on a bus that has been ridden by who knows who, and I don't think it's safe for the kids. So personally, I think if this was back in the 20s, 30s, maybe this would be a wonderful idea. But this day and age, I think it is the most dangerous for our most vulnerable.
Evelyn, thank you for that. That really, I mean, I didn't even think about that. Who knows what they leave on the bus? Right.
Okay,
Right.
so I think we're
Thank
at
you.
the point where, Melissa, we could strike the rest of that paragraph.
Yes.
And if the committee is happy with TC 15 as it stands now,
100%.
Hearing no objections, we will move on.
Okay, so those were the policies that were nested under the first public transportation transit goal. The next goal is trails and non-motorized transportation goal. Develop a non-motorized trail system throughout the planning area to provide access within neighborhoods, between neighborhoods, to schools, public lands, and other trail systems.
I would start by saying some of that, not a lot, but some of it exists already. So develop might not be the right word, but maybe continue to develop would be more accurate. Is that?
Mm-hmm.
So continue to develop non-motorized trail system.
Rob, what would you think about plan and continue to develop?
Sure.
How about plan and continue developing? I think
Okay.
we already have some. Plan and there we go.
And then just remove the A and we're good.
You got it.
Then system needs to be plural. Does it?
Sure. All right. Any committee members have any more input on the goal? Moving on to TC 16.
Okay, number 16, the county should develop trail standards and a classification system for use throughout the county. Until such trail standards are available, current best practices such as Forest Service design standards should be referenced to inform trail design.
Any objections to TC 16? Moving on to 17. It's highlighted because why, Melissa?
Highlighted because this was something that was brought up by and Liz will jump in here, by a community member at the July 15th meeting. And so this was added on the 5th with the subcommittee review. So this was an idea that had not been addressed but was brought up by a community member last month. So that this was added in to capture that concept.
Okay,
And it reads, trails should allow for adequate accessibility and designed to meet American with Disabilities Act requirements wherever possible. And I should probably say be designed.
so this is a difficult issue, I think, because on one hand, I absolutely want to see as much accessibility as possible, but on the other hand, the costs associated with that significantly impact opportunities for development. And so I think we need to think carefully about how this is worded and phrased and make sure it best reflects our community's values.
I'd
Is-
like to say, Rob, I think the wording that you've got here covers that when you say whenever possible. Because there are going to be a lot of cases where that won't work or it can't be funded adequately. So the statement you've got, I think, is a pretty good one in covering those bases.
Okay, because to meet ADA, it would have to be paved. Is that correct?
I think that's part of it. But it does
Yeah, there's
depend
minimum
on,
widths and slopes and all kinds of additional.
How
right.
about, how about saying ADA standards per Forest Service? Because the Forest Service already has ADA standards, don't they?
Yeah, I talked to Patrick about this. Is Liz and Bernice. Yeah, they do. I talked to a lot of people about this. How can we make it simple? How do we address it, but we don't get in detail? Because what I've learned when I talk to other people, whether it was Jess or Patrick or other members, Melissa as well, it depends on where the trails are, what money comes from, what federal money it is, and then it's subdivided how they will do all the studies and say what we have to do, and then they would decide if they would actually make it an ADA trail. And sometimes you can't, like the Forest Service, they only care about ADA when there's facilities in the area. They have to make ramps up to the restroom. They've got to make ramps out of the parking lot. But if there aren't facilities there and it's just a raw bike trail, sometimes they don't get involved in it because there's not facilities there. It's my understanding. But everyone, and every time you get money, depends on what federal money it is to bring it up to that. And it's so complicated, but I felt we needed to have it in because it is important to address accessibility.
Right.
So,
And could
Liz?
we add
Yes,
that
sir.
Forest Service?
Pardon me?
Could we add the ADA Act requirements per?
Well, it's different federal money when it's on when
Don't want to
government
get
land
specific there.
communities.
You're
Don't
limit,
do that.
Bernice, you would be limiting your access to money if you said that.
Right.
Yeah, that is
Number
entirely
two.
too specific.
Yeah, and number two, I think John Ruggles' comment was right on track. It says whenever possible or wherever.
Okay.
And so
Actually,
that's-
give Liz credit for that, please.
Okay.
Okay, Liz, you got credit.
All right, now that
Let's
we've
start.
properly credited this, does anyone have any objections to TC 17 as it stands?
I have a question about it. So
Okay.
if it goes as is, as it's written, could we still use the Forest Service ADA specifications?
If it's a place with facility, right, Rob? I mean, if because they're worried about ADA and accessibility with facilities, not necessarily a trail, is my understanding after talking to McSweeney. Yeah, go ahead, Mrs.
You really want to leave this as general as possible.
Yes, that's what John Ruggles told me. Yep.
Just to clarify, Bernice, some trails may not be built on Forest Service land, so there are other standards that the county looks at, as well as in terms of, how the design needs to meet the requirements for ADA. So, specifically citing Forest Service could get confusing down the road when trails are being built in other places. The standards that we refer to in 16 are for the design, but the ADA is so specific. I think that leaving it more general is probably the best approach.
Could we make it even more general by going with removing ADA and just saying with accessibility requirements, so that it would be whoever's accessibility requirements they were, whenever possible?
Rob, I think I think that's a good idea. As a matter of fact, in talking to people about this before our meeting, that was pretty much what I had suggested for exactly the same reasons you were suggesting that. But I'd like to make one comment relative to this. Although there is no national standards, there is a set of guidelines that were put together by the American Association of State Transportation and Highway Officials that is rather lengthy and rather detailed and gives a lot of options for creating what they called at the time bicycle paths. Now, keep in mind, this was done in 2012 and has not been updated since. It is in the engineering and design manual as a reference that the county uses. So if anybody has a question about what it is, where it is, I have a copy of it on my computer. You can refer to the design manual and look through that. It's out there. It's an excellent guideline.
Okay. So John, are you suggesting that generalizing this a little bit more by just saying with accessibility requirements is a good idea or not?
I think it is a very good idea to do that rather than being specific for exactly the reasons you articulated.
So Melissa, could we do that and then ask for additional committee input? Just replace that with accessibility.
Oh, we got, okay.
Accessibility requirements? Is that, or just accessibility? Oh, okay, I see.
Accessibility requirements wherever possible. Yep. So they may be ADA, they may be state, they may be local, they may be.
That's more general.
Okay, good. Okay.
And that is a good idea because disability or accessibility requirements are not entirely federal under the ADA Act. A lot of states, municipalities, counties, other jurisdictions have requirements like this too.
Okay.
This is Evelyn. I have maybe it's a really stupid question because maybe I'm just getting so lost in this wording. Are we as an area plan reaching out too far beyond where we should be? Because we're saying the county should develop trail standards. Does that mean the county does not have any standards to look at for transportation policies? I mean, I don't. It's going to be one of those. I'm not going to make sense because I don't know what I'm saying. But what I'm I think what I'm thinking is, what does the county go to right now if they want to look at, say, another place for their trails and non-motorized transportation?
John, could you tell us? Yeah, John, could you tell us the trail that the county just built, just north of me, actually, that you probably and Evelyn I know uses? What were the standards for that? That's a just completed trail by the county.
Actually, what came to us on the Planning and Zoning Commission was nothing more than make it passable for pedestrian and equestrian traffic. The easement itself is a deeded easement for our development up here, and that specified it was for the purposes of equestrian easement to the forest, but there was no standard that was presented in particular, other than it's got to have a fence on it with locked gates.
Okay, so there's a wide variety of options available, and this document will suggest to P&Z and the commissioners, when possible, we should try to meet the accessibility requirements that may apply in that specific instance. Otherwise, we don't, and understand that we can't always.
You're absolutely correct.
So the county really doesn't have any kind of standards that they follow. It just kind of willy-nilly, whatever happens, whatever anybody suggests.
Well, let me just jump in here a bit. You know, the county does have an engineering design manual for roads. So those are very specific design standards that the county has adopted. What What the county doesn't have are specific standards for trails. So it's just to clarify that there are some very clear standards for developing roadways, and but the trails are something that, that's where number 16 actually refers to some of the best practices.
Until the
that we-
county gets its own design, right?
And there's a lot of, obviously the Forest Service, they're leaders in developing trails. So, I mean, they're doing a lot of the hard work for other jurisdictions and other agencies to look at, how they come up with their designs. So it's not a bad place to reference.
Okay, I get it now. Thank you.
So looking at TC 17 now, any committee members have any additional comments?
I
If
like
not-
it.
If not, we're going to move on to TC 18.
Okay, so there are 3 parts to that. And 18 is new developments should contribute to maintaining, building, and providing access and connections to public lands, trails, and pathway systems within the planning area by, and then there are 3 options under here. So number A, working with the county and U.S. Forest Service to identify appropriate access points to public lands, existing or proposed trails, and neighborhood connections when developers of private lands adjacent to Forest Service propose new developments. Remember, each time there's a development next to public land, it may or may not be an appropriate place for an access point.
There are public lands, though, beyond Forest Service that we border against. If I recall correctly, there is some state land.
Mhm.
Is that right?
There is state land. There is one large section of state land.
So we
And
probably shouldn't limit this to just U.S. Forest Service, but also state trust. Is that correct?
Yeah.
state trusts, they're a lot more hesitant to give access onto their land because they're not, they're holding that for future use.
Yeah, I'd like to add a little bit to what Melissa just said. The statutes governing state land have resulted in the creation of a recreational use permit, which is granted on an individual basis. Also, if you're a hunter and you have a permit, that allows you access to state lands also. So I know there's a couple of people who may use that a little bit occasionally, but I know how that works. But nevertheless, that is the law, and you can be cited for trespassing, and it can be a little costly because I know someone who has done that and paid the price.
I guess what I'm kind of suggesting here is rather than limit it to just U.S. Forest Service, to say public lands.
That would probably be a much better way to approach it because.
And then address it however it is appropriate. Yeah.
You have BLM land in some areas, same kind of thing. It's a lot more liberal than the requirements the Forest Service and the state of Arizona may have.
Public land agencies? Could that be public land agencies?
No,
Because it's going to be funny, at the end of the sentence, we're saying public lands, access to public lands. So we're in public lands, going to public lands. If you read on to the sentence, we're gonna have to change that, right?
Or access to public, there you go.
See?
I like the idea of adding the state. And is there any city or county land that would possibly be part of that also?
Could be.
I don't know that there's any city land out here, is there?
Does the city own the dump?
The city owns land
Oh,
out.
it does. No, that's not in our planning area.
Yeah, that's true.
I was going to say, working with the county, states and federal lands
And federal agencies.
and federal agencies.
To identify appropriate access points to public lands, existing or proposed. Yeah. Very good, Brian.
Thank you.
Did you want to modify the last part of that where it specifies Forest Service? When developers of private lands adjacent to public land?
Just, yeah, room for service and just public, yeah.
Okay, one of the things I'm concerned about here is, you know how hard it is sometimes working with the county, state, and federal agencies. I want something when a development goes in and blocks off trails, that they have to provide access through their development to access that trail.
I don't think there's any legal way that we can do that.
That is correct. Rob is right about that. If a development is platted and the Forest Service does not want access because of social trails that have been created and are detrimental to the public land, then we on the Planning and Zoning Commission and staff and the Board of Supervisors will look at what is in the plan for that plat, as a for instance, and say, because of this, there will be no public access via easements within that development.
I'm looking at the 2001 area plan. It's got a, I'm looking at number 1 on page 78, if anybody wants to look at the 2001 area plan. Says, because maintaining public access to public lands and open spaces is important to the community, the county, Forest Service, and community residents should work together to designate and maintain access points. So that's kind of what we're saying. For new developments, the county shall, the word shall require developers of private lands adjacent to Forest Service to provide signed and delineated access points for non-motorized modes to public lands, adjacent neighborhoods, and existing or proposed trail systems.
You're reading TC 19, right?
I'm reading the 2001 area plan, and I thought that number 1 was a good example of maintaining the access points to different trails.
Because of overuse, that is something that we no longer do as a rule of thumb with any kind of development. It is a matter of working with the Forest Service. And again, the other thing that Rob mentioned, it is a private property issue for a lot of people. There are people who have looked at development plans and said, I do not want an easement across my property, even though it has become an unofficial or an illegal access to the forest or other public lands. And we take that into consideration when these are things come to the Planning and Zoning Commission, and we make a recommendation to the Board of Supervisors.
Well, don't we have public right-of-ways? And aren't some trails, if they've been in existence for a certain period of time?
No, it does not work that way. It is the right of adverse possession, and in order to establish that right, you have to go to Superior Court and make your case in order to establish that right. We've addressed several of those at the Planning and Zoning Commission, and this was what it took for the individual who wanted the right, a similar right, what they had to do. Now, in one case, they were quite successful, but it is a lengthy process and it is prescribed in statute.
I thought that as an area plan, you know, we kind of help guide the developers on what they should provide. I mean, Cosmino is a really good example. They have trails behind every lot, lead to the forest all around it.
You are correct about that, but things have changed a little bit, and the Forest Service in particular have a responsibility to maintain public lands, And that is the reason why they, in a number of areas, they're eliminating social trails, and why we just don't grant access to every lot in a subdivision or a planned residential development without consulting with the Forest Service.
I understand that. Thanks, John.
You bet.
So TC 18, item number alpha here, I believe we have thoroughly discussed. Does anyone have any additional inputs on that? Moving on to Bravo. Melissa?
Sorry. So the continuation of that sentence would be new development should contribute to maintaining, building, providing access and connections within the planning area by connecting to trails and paths identified in the following studies and resources. The U.S. Forest Service Mount Eldon Dry Lakes Recreation Planning Project, or the MEDAL, which we've seen a presentation on, the Flagstaff Open Space and Greenways Plan, the Flagstaff Urban Trail System, or FOOTS, and the Flagstaff Trails Initiative. So these are all projects that are either currently underway or have been underway and adopted for some time. And the intention here would be to watch for those connections and to make logical access points, and where possible, private developments have them connect to those systems.
Melissa, a question. This is Brian. That list seems to be pretty exhaustive. My question here is whether it should just read "and other documents that are appropriate," so that it leaves it open for an additional study that may happen.
Well,
I agree with Brian, or at least add "and any additional documents that may exist," because over the next 10 to 20 years, who knows what's going to happen.
And
right. But
my reason for that is that we're talking about the Doney Park transportation survey. Didn't we refer to that earlier?
Oh, the multimodal plan?
The multimodal plan, excuse me. So
right.
I would just say "and other appropriate documents."
okay.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
good. I'm glad, because I thought you said take out the specifics, and I want the specifics because when I talk to people that do these plans, they say make sure they're listed. If we want connection, keep them in the plan specifically, and then you can be general. But if it's not in there, it's not going to be addressed. So that's why we got down specific.
This achieves.
I think Brian's got the right idea here. I was trying to think of a different way to word it up at the front, but nope, Brian's suggestion is much better.
So Melissa, if you will go straight up and take the "and" out following FUTS.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you. And yes, as you all know, there's a lot of work going on behind the scenes with these different projects.
Okay.
I just have one suggestion. How about referring to them as planning documents? Because that's really what they are.
Sorry.
I like that.
Oops.
That's fine.
I don't know what, there we go. I have a touchy touchpad. Okay, there we go.
All right. TC 18 Bravo. Does any committee members have any additional comments on that? Excellent. Charlie, please, Melissa.
Okay, providing roadside trails or designated paths where feasible. So those are trails along the roads or pathway or along paths along the roads.
Oh, Melissa, may I interject? This is Liz again. Are we going to take out, because you have it yellowed above that, CNE 19? Do you want to take that out? I don't know why we put that in there. What just
that is,
refer to it?
A lot of what we try to do, what we've been trying to do with the area plans is give some cross references to similar policies in other sections. So
but it's right down underneath it. So that's what I was thinking. Should we?
No,
okay.
Well, so NE 19, sorry, that's natural environment 19.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. I was thinking it's TC. Sorry. Me bad. Never mind.
So in Charlie here, Melissa, it looks like we're saying additional roadside trails as they pass, but we're not talking at all about what those should look like, or what their function should be. Is there any need at this in here to put that, or have we adequately addressed that somewhere else in this document? So should they be, bicycle, equestrian, pedestrian, motorized? Is there a roadside trail could be a whole bunch of different things.
It could be, and I
think,
And maybe
Go ahead,
that's
Liz.
good that we just leave it that way.
we left it open in general because it all depends on where these trails what community wants it. Is it on, I think we initially put this on here because people were saying they wanted a roadside trail on 89. And we've heard so many different reasons why not to put it right on 89. But there have been places where there are trails right next to major highways. And so I wanted to let those voices be heard. And so trails and paths, whenever feasible, it just opens it up that we're not forgetting those. They probably would never happen, but that we're open that if you don't put it in, it's not going to be addressed. And that was another thing Patrick keeps on saying. A lot of these things just have to be in there. So if anyone brings it up in the future.
Got it. Thank you, Liz.
Rob, I was wondering if we could look at the old area plan again and maybe add a letter D or a delta to this. It's number 2 on page 79 in the old area plan. In existing situations or lot splits where access points are desired, utilize appropriate and fair incentives to encourage developers or property owners to provide such easements when their proposed development or existing property blocks such access.
And that's addressed, I believe, Bernice.
We already addressed that. Yeah.
it's below in TC 19B.
We haven't got there.
We haven't gotten there yet.
Oh, sweet. Okay, great. Liz, I can't believe you did this whole thing yourself in the list side.
We got a lot of help. Melissa and I got a lot of help. We bugged a lot of people.
All right.
I have a question.
Evelyn.
On TC 18, C, doesn't that kind of repeat what TC 18 says in the first place? What's the difference?
Okay. Let's see, new development.
Well,
I think it specifies roadside trails or paths.
a unique kind of trail, I guess.
Yeah, I would have to agree with that. My feeling is, in looking at that, it would be such as or very specific about something like considering a trail parallel to 89. I think that's probably what Liz was thinking of.
Correct.
I think of the multimodal path on Cokefield. That's one of these types of, that's a roadside trail.
Yeah.
It's in the right of way.
Okay.
And there's also one that parallels Campbell.
Right.
And to tell you the truth, go ahead, Melissa.
Oh, I was just gonna say, if I had another screen, I would bring up the map. I could toggle back and forth if we wanted to, but
No,
yeah,
probably not necessary. I think
Yeah, that's good. All right. That was
Getting
just,
in here.
thank you.
And we also put in the difference between trails and paths because there are difference and we're still trying to get a definition of trails versus paths because there is a difference and we're still working that in the glossary. So we wanted to include both of them.
okay. So TC 18 Charlie now. Everyone on the committee, any other comments? We're good with that. We've been going about an hour and 45 minutes. Would anyone like to take a 5-minute break before we move on to TC 19, excuse me.
Rob, can you share with us how much more we have to go?
Melissa can.
hang on one second. So we are on 19 and there are 32, but yeah, 32.
I think we've got a full evening left.
Could we please stop at like 7:30 so we can have the public comments and end at 8 o'clock?
We can work to achieve that as best as possible.
Maybe we could keep going till 8 if we don't have comments.
Yeah, let's just chalk that up as a good intention here.
Yeah.
All right. I'm going to suggest we take a 5-minute break. It's 6:45 right now. At 6:50, we can all come back and get started here on TC 19.
Thank you, Ron.
Thank you, Rob.
Good idea.
Hey, Melissa, would you stay on board so I could mute my face? Could you teach me how to do that? I can't mute my face. How do I mute my face?
You stuck here.
Do you see the black bar with different options, like where it says mute, start video, security?
Oh, I see view options. Let me see that.
So where
Okay.
it says start video, just there's a down arrow, just touch that. And actually, no, just click on the start video and it should turn you off.
Start. I don't even see start video.
You don't. So there should be like a
Bottom
blank-
left. Look at
Bottom left. Oh, shoot fire. Okay. There. See, I like that. Yeah, I like that. I didn't know how to do that. I don't have to have my face up there all the time. Okay. Good.
Thanks. I'll be right back.
Thank you, Melissa. Thank you, Evelyn.
You're welcome.
Well, based on all these muted videos and audios, I guess a break was a good idea.
Yep, it was.
It was.
And most importantly, Liz, do you know how to mute your video now? She spent all that time learning and now can't come back.
I think she got it.
I'm here now.
We knew you would be, Liz.
You can't be so lucky.
All right, so we'll make sure that we're back to quorum level here. I see 1, 2, Dave, John, Harriet, are you back? Brian, are you back?
Yes, I just have been muted and
Thank you. And we have Bernice. So it looks, and there's Evelyn. So we have a quorum. Excellent. Thank you all for your patience and coming back on time. You're betraying the Flagstaff tradition of being 10 minutes late for everything, but thank you for that. Melissa, I think we're ready to start with TC 19 now.
Okay. To maintain public access to public lands and open spaces, the county, Forest Service, and community residents should work together to designate and maintain access points. Strategies include, but are not limited to, A, access points for trails should be constructed and signed to current best practice trail standards.
Okay, so I'm looking for community or committee input on TC 19 and TC 19A.
This is Brian.
Mm-hmm.
We have, instead of using Forest Service consistently, I thought we had been looking at federal lands or state and federal lands because those are public lands.
In this case, it'd be federal agencies, right?
Federal agencies, okay.
How about public agencies?
I think you used public before.
To maintain access to public lands and open spaces, the county, state and federal agencies, and community residents.
Okay.
Would community residents go first?
Yeah, it should. They're going to have to initiate it. It's not going to come the other way around.
Right.
Testing Melissa's word skills here. Impressive work. Add the S back on should. There we go. And 19A alpha, access points to trails should be constructed and signed to current best practice trail standards. Any thoughts or inputs? Moving on to Bravo, please, Melissa.
In existing situations or for lot splits where access points are desired, encourage developers or property owners to provide easements when their proposed development or existing property blocks such access. This is a difficult, call to make because we process many land division permits throughout the year, and it really is something for the community to help keep an eye on, to point out those access points to property owners and to see if there's any interest in maintaining easements, because it would be an easement across their property.
Yeah, I'd like to add one thing to what Melissa said, in that when a lot split is recorded, then that would be perhaps a place to encourage that if access pre-exists, but there's no requirement that that be done right now. Very simply, it is, again, private property rights issue.
And a lot of times we won't even know about it at the staff level if it isn't an easement that shows up.
Yeah, and it would have to be a deeded easement that would show up And Melissa's absolutely right about what shows up at the staff level when these things get reviewed.
So TC 19B then, any suggested changes to it, or is it good as it exists, committee members?
Yeah, probably good idea to leave that there because it, I know if something there is there like that, when it comes to the P&Z commission level, that one, staff is going to look at it and it's going to be in their analysis. And then two, the commission is going to look at it and say, well, hey, maybe we need to make a point of doing something like this and achieving that access.
Is this the one, TC 19B, is this the one that relates to item 2 in the 2001 area plan that I was talking about, utilizing incentives for developers such as, you know, tax breaks or lot size adjustments, fee adjustments, or liability releases for allowing an access point through their property?
Well, remember we talked about this a couple months ago. This is Liz. And remember we said you can't do tax credits, or that's not legal. Remember we had a whole discussion about that. I mean, months ago we did. You can't say tax incentives or this little dangling this carrot. You can either encourage them to do it or they can say no. That was my understanding of a meeting we had a while back. You can't dangle little carrots.
Okay, when I was working on the Pacific Crest Trail, the San Diego County Board of Supervisors.
Yeah, but that's California.
Oh, that's true.
Yeah, it's completely different over here in Arizona. And I think,
as we all know.
So you're right about the discussion.
How could you encourage somebody though? You know, say like you're a great guy or something like that. Well, I mean, what encouragement would someone need to put a trail through their property?
Well, we actually did that in our neighborhood. You know, Bernice, that actually happened. And I used to run by somebody's house and cut through their backyard, and they didn't want me to do it. And I said, I've been doing this for since I moved, so really 20 years. And they said, well, that encroaches on our privacy. And I said, I'm not looking at your windows. I'm enjoying the sunflowers. And he goes, you know, I never really thought about that. I go, most people that are running by here are not really looking in your windows. And so he put some trees up, and he just never really thought about it. So I guess county can talk to him, or individuals in the community can talk to him. But really, I don't think we have any legal authority to say you have to put easements in. I don't even think developers, do we have that legal? We can encourage them to say, if you want this to be an environmentally community friendly area, you've got, like, even in the new Slayton Ranch area, Bernice, there's a beautiful, nice sign. And at first I was mad, but then I said, well, maybe they just have dogs that are going to be barking at you when you go by there. They said, hi neighbors, we really don't want you using this, but 2 houses down, there's an access. And so I said, okay. And there's a nice little sign there. So I
too much of our access. That's a big deal. I mean, the letter from, I believe it was Lisa Adams, that talked about.
She got cut out. Yeah, and I think it can happen. Sure.
It happens all over.
So,
and is there any other county in the state of Arizona that offers incentives for people to provide access through their property?
well,
I don't think you can do that.
let me chime in here for a minute, please, because I would be remiss. I don't think we want to designate what we're encouraging, what types of things we want to award somebody. We simply want to have a general statement that says that we're going to encourage property owners to provide easements or other access avenues so that non-property owners in that area, people who don't live next to the forest can still get to it.
Right. I see you're not wanting to limit the encouragement. You know, it makes it very general, but I wish there was a way that we could require it.
There's no legal way to do that.
There's no legal way.
Can't do it.
Not in Arizona.
Okay, so TC 19B. Any additional comments on the current verbiage in that? Excellent. We'll move on to TC 20.
And Rob, if I could just make one quick comment about 19 and the planning efforts that go behind all of these trail systems. I did some work up in Nevada with doing some trail planning and with a volunteer organization, similar to what Bernice did, I'm sure, with the Pacific Crest Trail. And a lot of the easements are much easier to acquire if there's a plan that actually, has a proposed route on it. So, that kind of ties back to the earlier policies that look at the ongoing planning efforts and some of the other policies that you've just modified to really point out that planning efforts are important. And then a lot of what we found, a lot of times easements are best acquired by just what Liz was talking about, talking to the property owners, showing them that they are making connections. And so it really is kind of good old fashioned one-on-one
Being a neighbor.
conversations.
Yep.
Yep, being a neighbor.
Yep.
So anyway, just good conversation.
May I offer an amendment, edit? Where it says to provide easements or alternate routes.
Where are you looking? Brian, where are you talking? TC what?
19B.
19B right here.
BBB. Okay, sorry.
Or how about just other access? There may be some good Samaritan out there who's willing to let people just walk across a trail on their property without anything else along with it.
Yeah, that's me. That's me. I got 10 acres and anyone can walk on my property to go to that forest.
Have you talked to your insurance agent about that?
Yeah, yeah.
Well,
I'm sorry. I retract that comment.
If the county can offer property tax breaks to seniors, why couldn't we give property tax breaks to people that provide access to the forest?
Well, if you want to go through the US, through the Arizona State Legislature, you might be able to do it.
Put on your lobbying hat and head down to Phoenix.
Unfortunately, not something our area plan can do.
Oh,
So I want to go back to John Ruggles. John, I'm perfectly happy with your edit. Other whatever.
Easements or other access.
Or other access, that was it.
Yep. Yeah, that pretty well covers the base, or the base is.
Yeah, anything will be covered under that. So,
Yep.
All right. Any additional comments on 19B? We will close discussion on that. Move on to TC 20.
Okay, 20 is a program wherein local neighborhoods adopt a trail for the purpose of upkeep and maintenance of trails within the neighborhood or adjacent forest areas is encouraged.
Hard to argue with that.
Boy.
Any comments? All right, we'll move on to TC 21.
Opportunities to work with local utility companies to provide trail corridors in desirable areas utilizing current franchise agreements is encouraged.
what type of utilities? Which ones?
All of them.
It could be gas, it could be electric, it could be water.
Communication.
What if somebody had a water line, say from Doney Park Water, like a main line run through their property right next to their house through their window? Would that be something that could be feasible?
Depends on the property, whether it is a deeded easement, in which case it belongs to the property owner, or whether it is actually something that belongs to the utility.
It's a deeded easement. There's a lot of them in Doney Park.
Right.
Where a building is built on top of a main line from Doney Park Water?
No, I'm just saying it's next to them. I know where some of them are out here and they're right next to houses. The water ones are.
But keep it,
The APS and the gas ones from the are
you have to keep in mind that the deeded easement still belongs to the property owner. And the other thing about it is they have liability attached to that easement, depending on how it is used and who uses it and what happens on that easement.
So Bernice, I think the way this is worded, it's saying where possible, we should work with the utilities to do that. We're not mandating it or demanding it. We're saying, let's leverage that opportunity when there are things like gas lines, power lines, other things that have clear benefits as public rights of way also.
If you want a good example of that, it is what SRP does down in the valley. Their canal banks are used as bicycle and pedestrian paths. And they have made agreements with the various municipalities to do that.
Okay.
But how are the property owners protected, you know, from having a bike trail running right next to their house, or, you know, or some kind of a trail? Is this part of eminent domain?
No, not at all. Not even remotely connected.
Are you talking more like the power line roads and the pipeline roads?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Okay, because I was immediately thinking about everybody I know that's got a deed easement through their property, thinking that they might lose their peace and quiet.
No, absolutely not. These are, you know, underneath the main power lines. These are the gas lines. These are the major communications lines that utilities negotiate franchise agreements with the county in exchange for the rights to use that land.
Okay. Is there any way we can put a word in here so that it doesn't go across private properties? That we are using the larger properties?
Well, doesn't this imply that you would recognize that if you were to work towards achieving trail corridors like this?
Well, even more so, John, I think when you say franchise agreement, they're not going to have a franchise agreement for property on private property.
That is quite true. Franchise agreement
by
is
saying
what you
franchise
have with
agreement,
transmission
Bernice, you have eliminated all private property because the county cannot enter into a franchise agreement for your private property.
Oh, okay. I didn't know that. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Rob, I saw Dave Wessel had his hand up. I don't know if he still has a point.
Yes, Mr. Chair. I believe there is legislation that provides indemnification for recreational easements on private property. I don't know if that applies to utilities. So, you know, if somebody's hunting on private ranch land or hiking across private ranch land, I believe there's indemnification granted through state legislation for those activities. So that might be something to investigate if you're concerned about those liability issues.
The liability issue, yeah.
So are you saying that is indemnifying the property, is that eminent domain?
No,
not at all.
Again, two completely different things. One is relieving the property owner of any legal liability for anything that may occur to other people legally using his property that they've granted access to. Eminent domain is seizing rights to that property, and that's completely different.
Okay, so are the property owners, I'm still confused now. Are the property owners protected from having, you know, their whatever utility lines going through their private property from becoming trails?
Yes.
Well, yes.
Okay.
Well, Bernice, let me ask you this one, because I think this is kind of interesting. Let me see your point of it. You want people to grant access to the forest on their property if it used to be used for access, and that's private, but you don't want utility lines to grant people access to do a trail because it's utility on your property, but both of them are private property. And so you're saying accesses that will always be there. Someone should just say, okay, I don't care. But maybe they're just like the people that on utility lines, and I don't know the reasons, we can encourage them to do it, but maybe they've had a bad encounter. But you're saying if it's got a utility line on there, you're worried that they're going to turn that into a trail. Well, what about an access trail?
They can't.
Well, that's what I'm saying. So you're saying you want access to be all the time in the forest, no matter if it goes through somebody's property or not, but that shouldn't be right. If they don't want it, it's their right since they bought property not to give that.
The access trail to the forest has not been on a private property yet. It's a developer's has bought property and is creating a development and blocking the access. People
If a
that have
developer owns property, it is private
Right.
property.
See, that's what I'm trying to say. I don't know how you think, I mean, in this case, in my neighborhood, people just talk to each other and everything turns out. I mean, we're just very open here, but I find that hard that you were saying that, but I just wanted to see if I understood you right. If there's a utility line there, you don't really want it to turn into a trail, but if it's an access to the forest and a developer buys it and now somebody bought the house, they should be forced to use that access. And I disagree with that.
Wait a minute. I'd like to add a little clarity to this.
Okay,
And I
thank you,
think
John.
that is provided by the fact that we are referring to franchise agreements.
Okay.
Not a distribution line that goes along an easement across your property, because that is not a franchise agreement.
Okay.
They're two totally different things.
And if I had a trail across my property when I bought it,
yeah,
and it existed on my property, I would understand that, because I bought the property with the understanding that the trail was already there. But with what you're saying is that we could, if I wouldn't want a new trail across my property just because there is a utility.
Oh, but you're saying existing ones should stay existing. And I don't know, there's so many trails into the forest that screw up the forest. There's so many man-made social trails. It's ugly. And I just worked with the Forest Service to block those trails out in Fernwood because there are so many ugly ones. And instead of just doing one, they had to make 3 on their ATV, sorry, ATVers. And I don't think that's right. They don't have to have access every so many feet, So
the other thing,
Bernice, just so I can clarify here real quick, if you buy a piece of private property, even if there's an existing trail access on it, that does not grant anyone any authority to continue to use it.
But I would understand, though, if I bought a piece of property and there was a trail there, I would appreciate, number 1, a tax break. Number 2,
but you'll never get it.
A release of liability.
Right.
And I would.
You're not going to get it.
But we're getting outside the scope of what we're talking about.
I'm going to shut up.
21 here. So let me draw us back to franchise agreement property, which is something legally negotiated between the county and these utility agencies. We're encouraging to be used when possible as public trails. That's what TC 21 is saying.
And I think it's good as written.
I agree.
Anyone have any objections to TC 21 as written? Then we will move on to TC 22.
Okay, there are a couple parts to this where easements or required permits can be obtained. Work with partner agencies to implement and establish the trails identified in the U.S. Forest Service Mount Eldon Dry Lakes Recreation Planning Projects, or METAL, the Flagstaff Open Spaces and Greenways Plan, the Flagstaff Urban Trail System, and the Flagstaff Trail Initiative projects. The following specific connections should be evaluated for feasibility. And just as a preface, some of these are actually listed in the 2001 plan. So number A, existing trails should be connected to link Fernwood with the Cokefield area to provide access to Peaks View Park.
Any suggestions to item A?
Actually, I've got a suggestion for the leading statement.
Okay.
TC 22. We've listed a number of trails, proposed trails, and everything. But I think it might be appropriate to say implement and establish the trails identified, but not limited to those in the following documents. Because there may be new plans.
Which is consistent. Yeah, we did that earlier too.
And we have to think, 10, 20 years ahead of time and cover all the bases that way for something new.
I think that with the list that we had before, also where we identified all the different trails, but then we generalized it to something We need
And
to
that
add
does this
that.
by not limiting it to,
Yeah, we need to add that after
Yeah,
the FTI.
yeah, Evelyn's right. And this is something that is very common in zoning codes and in statute. When you don't want to be
I think
limiting
that's good,
yourself.
Melissa. So Melissa added it at the very beginning. So identified in, but not limited to.
Right, there you go. That's where it belongs.
All right. Thank you, John.
You bet.
And item A, we want to connect Fernwood with the, or give Fernwood access to the Peaksview Park. Anyone object to that?
This is Brian. I don't object to that. I'm wondering if we need a statement that's more general that would say something to the effect, connect existing trails such that different Doney Park, different planning area communities can access the different county facilities, like Peaksview Park. Make it more general.
In this case, I think, Brian, that might be a little too ambiguous because then it's everything has to connect to everything or nothing, or,
That's not,
well,
that wasn't what I was intending.
I know.
The reason why we put that in there, Brian, this is Liz, is because right now, Fernwood is kind of detached. Someone said there was a connection between the old trail, let me see, Stardust, and then it goes into another neighborhood and then goes over to the old dump road, which it used to be, but now there are new houses there that have cut that easement off, so there's no connection. There used to be a Forest Service connection between Fernwood and us, and then once you get into Doney Park, you can go to Coachfield. That's been cut off. So I just wanted to recommend that trail that used to be there is no longer there, and then we've got to find other existing trails to connect to Fernwood, because it's not.
Taylor.
Or did you find something new, Sailor? Okay, good.
So maybe this is what you're talking about already, Liz, and I got it wrong. But so I go down to take that trail that you're talking about, and it's the you have to ride along the private road, basically.
Yeah.
They did fence that off. So
right.
They do have, you can access it. You can do that. You just ride along on the easement along the private road, but there's a fence between you and the private road because they did recently fence that other area off
Right.
too. So
Okay, so there is. I didn't find it. Okay.
But the easiest thing to do is just to take the other, the actual connector to the trail where it says trail access.
Okay.
So, which is, a couple of blocks from here, and I don't remember the exact road that it's on. I could get back to you about that. But there is an access point to that trail. And
So should we leave A in there then? So should we leave in there existing trails should be connected? So, or we just say, if it's connected, then we take this out now? This is why we wanted to put a lot of these that we have listed here. I wanted the committee to look at it because some of them are not feasible, that what we're going to talk about, hopefully not, maybe the next meeting. But so if you're saying there's existing sales already there, should we take this out? It should be connected. If it is connected and that trail, you can get easement off the old dump road, then should we take this off? Yeah.
It seems doesn't it seem too specific to be just in a regional plan? It's just, it's a neighbor. I live just north of them. Isn't that just a bit specific? And shouldn't it be a general thing if neighborhoods wish to have, or if some neighborhoods are perched, can they find a way? But this is, one neighborhood's problem. It seems to me it's specific for a regional plan.
Right. Well, you know what? If you go down this list, a lot of these are from the old area plan of 2000, and they get specific. I mean, you wait and see, because some of these I've taken out because they're just not good. But again, if you look at the old area plan, go ahead.
I'm with Liz. I'm just going to say I'm with Liz just because as a person who utilizes trails on a regular basis, I have had a heck of a time figuring out exactly what I can and cannot do. And I have ended up with dead ends where I can't even get out of the forest because there's supposed to be something there that's no longer there and the map's not right. So so yeah, I mean, I do think I'm with Liz 100% that this is a huge issue, especially for somebody who likes to, do bike recreation or horse or hiking recreation. I mean, it's pretty critical, and there are a ton of places around here like that.
And these are just ones that came from the old plan or that have been suggested this year. Wait till you read Nick and Dave's, once they clean it up, we work on it and we can present it. There are specifics because there are projects that really need it. And the old plan had specifics. If you looked at the old plan, I mean, they came down to sidewalks and where to put the curve and where to put the sidewalk and where to put the walkway, because it was such a need and it was a safety need. So we got some specifics that some of this came from the old plan because people were still concerned about trails, and they're still
And Liz,
concerned.
this is Melissa.
So-
Yeah.
Can I
and
just-
Sorry.
Before we move on here, I think we're getting broad and detailed all at the same time and not actually making a lot of progress here on this.
Right.
Okay.
It sounds like everyone in our planning area would probably like to have access to other parts of our planning area, including Peakview Park. And that existing trails should be used and expanded to provide that kind of access. And a statement that said something like that, I think, would accomplish what we're really after here, which is an interconnection amongst our community of trails, and especially access to things like Peaksview Park without having to get in the detail that's shown right here.
Rob, I was just thinking, what if we did something like, instead of get specific, like Liz was saying, we're going to start looking at, just say something, encourage connecting trails within the area plan as residents deem necessary or desirable or something like that. That way we're not being specific with, well, connect this one to this one, now this one to this one. It's more like if there are people that are out there that are using them, kind of let them decide, because it might be more than what is really necessary.
Well,
this is Brian. Don't we have a multimodal study that we've proposed or is ongoing? And isn't that a place where they can really work on this issue instead of our trying to get into the weeds to say connect line A with line Q?
Agree. And we've already encouraged that study be updated.
Let's go back to the the multimodal study.
Right.
Let
And
it
that,
do what it's supposed to do.
and so if I could just give a little bit more background to this, then for the 2001 area plan, there was a transportation committee that worked for a while before the area plan committee even got started. So they actually did the transportation chapter prior to the area plan being updated. And with that, then they had identified some of the specific projects that you're looking at, although these have been significantly updated. And then when the 2011 multimodal plan was done, that was created with some grant funding that the county was able to acquire. So, that again got very project specific. This is an opportunity with this area plan to look at some of the work that's been done and do a reality check on some of those very specific projects, because some of them are good connections. And if they are in the plan, then that triggers a review by planning staff when there's an opportunity, for instance, to make a connection, as long as it's feasible, as long as it's relevant and current. So I think that's part of what we might have the opportunity to look at with the recommendations on specific projects that Nick and Dave put together, but also to look at what was also what might be carried over from these other projects. We have looked at them. Liz has looked at these very hard. Also, our previous transportation plan looked at these pretty thoroughly to really understand what might be a good carryover into this plan. So I do agree that this is it is a bit of a mix, but having the projects listed could be beneficial in the end. So that's obviously a committee decision. And Brian, you're right. Just in one of the earlier policies, we did, specifically mention the 2011 multimodal study and that it be updated to current conditions, because that could be a whole separate. Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I just said, and boy, does it need to be updated. Boy, oh boy. Yeah.
but there's been a start on it, because some of those
Yes.
trails
Oh, yeah.
have been constructed, and some of them we know are probably not relevant today. So this is an attempt to reflect some of that. Did that help at all?
Could we go through these and maybe see the rest of them and see if this were in the direction we want to go, and then come?
Yeah, I just wanted to give that background. I mean, this is, obviously a committee discussion. And then there could be an opportunity at an open house to further, have the community look at projects and get more specific on a project list. That doesn't necessarily need to be policy level. It could be part of your text or an appendix. But use this as an opportunity to capture some additional ideas without taking too much time for it.
Right. And may I just add the ones, like I said, Nick and Dave, they're very specific. And some of these are very specific, but I got from the Forest Service guru, Patrick McSweeney, that if you don't put it in there and you don't put some kind of direction, when they get the money, they're not going to do it. And especially since we don't have the funding, we don't think to do another really update. We want to do multimodal, would love to do a transportation study, all that money that came in before this first area plan was written, but I don't know if we're going to get the money. So he said, just make sure you include it or dot it or add it, because then if we do get the money, if it's not in here or suggested, it may not be looked at. And that's why I got more specific, and especially about these trails like the MEDL and the FUTs and this and the FTI initiative. He goes, just include it, Liz, because that one that was done in 2010 that got dropped, it's being relived, because that trail that was looked at in 2010, it had an ArchiSite study, it had ESA study, it had everything. And for political, well, I shan't say that, but anyway, it was dropped for certain reasons. But since it was in that area plan, it was looked at again and resurfaced because it was specifically stated. So that's why I went back and looked at these and said, we exited some of them out, but some of them I left, and some are going to be added more with Dave and Nick's study, because they went out and did a ride around, a very detailed one about projects. So I think, yes, I'm going to shut up.
If we're looking, I want to take us back to like 30,000 foot level here for just a second. And this is the area plan is a capture of the vision of what we want our community to be. It seems to me right now that with the level of detail that we're getting to in these specific steps, and I understand what you've heard from these individuals, that they want to see these projects succeed, and therefore they're trying to get this information put in as many different formal documents as they possibly can to better enable them to see that happen. I'm having a hard time understanding how if this level of detail really belongs in an area plan where we're saying specific connection points.
Okay, Rob, I get that, but we're not being specific. I'm not saying what trails. I said existing trails should be connected, because Fernwood's on this side of the road. I'm not saying Timberline, because that needs another connection across 89. I'm saying Fernwood. Well, see what I'm saying? I'm saying existing trails, which they are. Once you're in Doney Park plan, there are so many social trails and little side road trails, and the roads are small. But Fernwood's kind of like out in the timberland, and they want to use this area thing, especially kids. And so that's why I included it, because it's not going to be that. I'm saying existing. Let's keep it.
I still wonder whether it belongs in the area plan, or if it doesn't belong in that multimodal plan or study.
Well, I was told through authorities to be, because that's why Nick and Dave went out and did projects. I was told that. So.
Okay. I guess we've pretty thoroughly discussed the pros and cons of the details here. I would like to ask committee members if we believe TC22 as it's written, and then Alpha specifically, are good as they stand, or if we feel we need to make any changes to them right now.
I'll give you a comment on that. I don't think we lose anything by including this, although it is specific. Nevertheless, it doesn't really relate to a policy that is going to necessarily be evaluated by staff, P&Z, or Board of Supervisors. So with that being said, I think that would make the case for leaving this in.
Okay.
That was my thought exactly.
All right. Unless anybody has any objections to leaving this in, then I believe that we can say A is good as written.
Let me offer an idea. And that is that we have a statement generally that says the connectivity of existing trails should be improved throughout this plan and include but not be limited to letter I, connecting Fernwood with Coach Field. Letter B, connecting Timberline with Doney Park. And what I'm getting to there is that we can make those specifics in very short sentences under a more general statement.
Well, we've got to wait till we get Nick and Dave's updated project drive-through. And I think that we should also, and I think that's great, Brian, but I think we should continue just to read before we want to vote to negate some of these, to see these other projects that made it through the other plan.
I'm not saying negate.
Oh, okay. I just don't.
They go to a different level and there's a short sentence rather than a complex sentence.
I have a suggestion. We stop at TC 22 and we move on, since it's going to take a while, and move on with public comment and go from there, because it looks like T22 or TC 22 is going to take us a while. Oh, I thought it had a whole bunch of different things. It only has like 5.
Oh, right. It's going to be added to because we could not get the other project, that the recent project drive-through around for this meeting. It's a long other list that's going to be added to this. We just could not get it together by this because it got presented and then it has to be reviewed and then it's got to be mapped and yada, yada, yada. And it just takes time.
And Liz, I think you're speaking to my earlier point, which is if we have a long other list, is that the kind of detail that we really should be including in this? Or is that just getting so far outside the scope of what an area plan is?
Well, that's why we need to get that other list and then read all these lists and decide that, because I think these are beautiful. And if it's not listed, it's not going to be picked up, just like the 2010 trail. That the Forest Service, Patrick, said, thank goodness someone documented in an area plan, because we wouldn't be able to lift it back out again. But it was important enough that it was listed, and so they pulled it from the ashes. And now we're going to get it, and now we're going to be connected to Futz Trail. If it hadn't been in there, we would not be connected. I'm sorry, I'm so passionate about this because
I understand
trails are so important to get people outside and out of their cars. End of story. Sorry.
Okay. So where we're at right now, Dave, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
What about if we have this big long list? Why don't we make it out as an addendum, and so it can be basically kind of like a separate document, but reference.
Yes. Yes. To leave out all the detail. That was my point. Is we're getting into minutia, and that's not a regional plan. That's literally a development plan, and endorse a kind of thing, but not item by item, such as, and then we can list. I agree.
So
that's definitely an option, or you could put it in the text or as an appendix.
I would like to hear what Liz has to say. You know, what the items are.
Okay, so I think what Evelyn suggested is really the only alternative we have at this point, considering where we are, because apparently there is a bunch of information that we don't have access to that applies to this specific section we're addressing right now.
Yes.
And the only way that we could continue would be to have that information included in here, which will have to be done between now and whenever our next meeting is, which we'll determine here shortly.
Okay, Rob, I have to agree with your assessment as well as Evelyn's on this. So
yeah,
it's the way to go.
What I'm going to do at this point then is say that we have completed through TC 21. That will be our stop point. And we will pick up again at our next meeting with TC, an updated, hopefully, TC 22. And I think our discussion should begin with that high level discussion of how detailed do we get and where do those details belong? And then we can go through the details. Does anyone have any objections to that?
No.
No objection.
No
No
objection.
Okay. Then Melissa, I believe we can switch back to your PowerPoint if you could, please. And this is our current status of our schedule. As we have worked our way through these different sections, we are apparently optimistic in creating this chart because it says we have completed transportation and circulation, which we have not yet, but we will soon. And that will be the last section of this that we have to go through before our scheduled open house, which is coming up in the last part of September. So that's where we currently are. The overall big picture here, our open house, let's see, the first one was scheduled for the 28th of September. Still looking like that will likely be at Cromer. We're still exploring some other options as possibilities.
Rob, could I speak to that briefly? I do
Please.
have that reserved. I have Cromer Elementary, their gymnasium, I believe it is, reserved for the 28th. When I spoke with FUSD though, they were not, 100% sure if that facility will be available due to, based on the virus and what's going on with the pandemic. The county has gone back to requiring masks in public places. So that is another matter of discussion. We will definitely have the virtual platform available. The other thing is that, keep in mind what might be happening with the pandemic and what we need to adjust for that.
And ironically, if we had picked September 29th, then the law as passed by the legislature would have gone into effect and the school district would have allowed us to use it. But that's not the case. So one discussion point I think I would like to have here is I personally feel pretty strongly that an in-person open house is a much more productive way to do this than one online. And as much as Melissa and Jess and other folks may not want to hear this, I would suggest that if we cannot do it in person on the 28th, but it looks like we could within a week or two or three after that, that we modify our schedule to accommodate that, because I just don't feel confident that we can get the kind of input that would give me the confidence in our plan with an online.
I agree.
Yeah,
I'm with Rob.
I'd kick it
I'm
down.
with Rob as well.
I'd kick it down the path. Is there any reason why it makes a difference 2 or 3 weeks? I can't make the 28th anyhow. I'm going to go see Hamilton, so I'm going to do that. But aside from that, the later we can do it and not really cripple ourselves, I think the smarter it will be. We don't need to endanger lives.
Yeah. Would it be possible to put the documents on the website also and provide some kind of an avenue for people to comment online?
Yes, definitely. That's our online service.
Part of
that
it,
we have.
regardless, yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Bernice, that's going to happen regardless of whether we do in person or online open houses. The entire document would be available for detailed review and abilities to provide comments back.
I have a question. Rob. Is there any compelling reason to do one central location for the open house, or might we think about smaller groups, which apparently are somewhat safer, and we could use the fire stations and Cromer School and maybe 1 or 2 other places, and maybe we would reduce the risk anyhow by reducing or increasing the number of locales, or does that just add complexity? I'm just thinking about safety.
It may be safer, but the logistics of doing that, considering limited personnel, are going to be very difficult to do.
I think,
Just
Harriet,
saying.
one of the things that would be important at these open houses is that as many as us, of us, the committee members as possible, actually be there to actually
Oh, yeah.
hear
Oh,
the
yeah.
comments.
Yes.
And so having multiple locations,
Okay.
you know, we're planning a minimum of 2 right now, open houses. That would make it 6 with the scenario you just described. And I think
I'm just thinking, you know, making it as safe as possible, so as many people as possible, yada, yada. Never mind.
Well, plus
but
Harriet,
there
the
will be
fire
a variety
stations.
of options available, both in person and online, like we mentioned to Bernice's earlier question. Evelyn?
Yeah, the fire stations aren't even allowing it at this point. So the fire stations aren't an option at this point, Harriet.
Okay. Ooh.
Okay, so we got near the end of the transportation section today. We have to have completed that before our open house. And I don't think we have another meeting scheduled between now and then right now. Is that correct, Melissa?
Well, the next meeting would be on the September 9th. So that is a question though, because in order to prepare for the open house, you know, we'll need at least 5 weeks to get postcard mailings out and make sure the facility is reserved. So that date is pretty important to determine and then make sure that we're ready for it.
You'll need 5 weeks from the day
Well,
that
in my experience, getting the postcard mailing out, that to be safe and to give people time to, you know, at least a week's notice. Yeah, it will take that long because of the production and then the mailing. My experience with getting those out, it takes a while.
Okay. So even if we haven't completed the plan, the postcards can still go out. That just puts the pressure on us to get it done. And we'll have as many meetings as necessary to do that. I think to me, it looks like one more meeting should complete the transportation section. Unless Liz's really long list is really, really long, we should be able to get through the rest of the transportation section in maybe a mini meeting. And I think it's important that we have a meeting after that, prior to the open house, to discuss the actual conduct of the open house, the things that we think are important, how we're going to mechanize that to maximize that public input opportunity.
Is
So your
there-
next,
I'm
Bernice?
sorry. Is there a way that we can notify more than just the renters of the property and notify the property owners too that do not live in the houses? Because people that have PO boxes and people that are out of town owners, they don't get notified of this the way that we're doing it now. Could we go through the tax roll and send out notices to people? This is like a zoning ordinance change. I think the property owners would benefit by knowing what's going on. Because we're not notifying people with PO boxes that own properties or live here. And we're not notifying the owners that are not occupying the houses.
Melissa, couldn't you generate 2 different lists? One from the GIS that says these are all the properties in the area, and then another one from the tax rolls, and
we
just do it there.
we can do that. It's a matter of budget when we're talking about mailing out to over 3,000 households.
Yeah.
I think this is really important though, because a lot of people didn't know about the last zoning change, and it was because they were never notified.
Melissa, I saw in the Parks area plan from 2001 or whatever, that they, in order to get the word out more, they put their postcard, as well as being sent out to the people, they put it in any public place within the area. So if you entered, say, the Silver Saddle store, there would be one there.
We've done that.
We did that with the survey postcard. It was there.
Okay,
so-
okay.
And
Yeah.
flyers were as well. But yeah,
Okay.
that would be definitely, we can do that, and we can, you know, having help from the committee members to, you know, get the.
Yeah, you're
information out
talking
to as
like,
many
you know,
places.
dollar store, I mean, district, you know, it's a big area, so
Mhm.
there'd be a lot of places where you could put these. And maybe if they don't get them in their mail, or if they don't pay attention to it, maybe they would see it in another place, or, or even the people that work there could say, hey, kind of encourage the knowledge of it at least.
Yeah,
We
that's a
could
great
also
point.
ask renters. We could also ask renters to send it to landlords as a double dip, that we would ask them to make sure that the people they are paying rent to know of this, because they will be affected, or perhaps not affected, but that they need to know. So we could ask renters to be our colleagues in this.
Well, I think we're getting pretty far into the
on that-
details of
Yeah.
things that aren't on tonight's agenda.
I like Rob's idea of using the tax rolls, because if you own property out here, you deserve a voice. And if you don't know what's going on because you haven't been notified, that, we don't have an excuse not to notify them.
So
Well-
Melissa, what I'd like to do is suggest that in between now and our next meeting, staff take a look at how we can best make sure both property owners and residents can be notified of these events. And then I think we can move on to our next agenda topic here.
Right, and I will send you all, I do have an estimate for doing the direct mail notice delivered by the Postal Service. So I don't have an estimate to do the first class postage. So that would be, again, it's we'll have to look into that. That would be a different line item there. So the question would be then, in terms of the open house date.
I think right now we should stick with what we have and work to achieve that goal.
So Rob, I hear you're saying stick with September 28th?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I
So
think that's a good idea.
So from now till 28th, we're gonna have 2 more meetings.
That's the way it appears to me would be necessary. One to finish up the review of the transportation, and then one for an overview of how we're going to conduct the open houses and what is going to happen, all that kind of stuff. So this agenda item on the slide here, overview of draft goals and policies, will actually be complete the transportation section and perhaps begin the organization for an open house. But because it's both those things, I'm wondering if we shouldn't move that date up if we can a little bit, so that we have an opportunity on the 9th or perhaps the 16th to finalize things before the open house on the 28th.
Yeah, Rob, I would suggest the 16th might be too late, just because we need time to, as staff, produce poster boards and design them, and that will take time, and it will all just be done in-house. We don't have outside assistance for that. So I'm looking at different Thursdays, and there's August 19th, August 26th, September 2nd, and September 9th. I think September 9th is the week of Labor Day week.
Looks like you've got a couple of reasonable dates in August.
So again, that would be the 9th, August 19th, August 26th, September 2nd, and then the 9th.
This is important enough, I think. So even if it's the 26th, I think that would put us the day after the Planning and Zoning Commission hearing. I would be up for that.
So I would like to propose that we meet 1 week from today, just like we did last month. We'll keep things fresh in our minds, where we're at, what we're doing, what our goal is. The mission of that meeting, it would be a mini meeting like we've had before, and it would be to complete the transportation section of this plan. And that would leave then the September 9th meeting free to do all of the planning for the open house. Can everyone look at their calendars and let me know whether September 9th works? I'm sorry, not September 9th, a week from today, so August 19th.
Good, works for me.
How about the 26th?
Sooner the better. Yes, that works for me.
The 26th or 19th?
19th, just because we don't know what we're going to get done on the next meeting. And if we need more time, then we've got more time. Whereas if we put it back, then we don't have, we're more getting into a time crunch.
Waiting 2 weeks doesn't gain us anything.
Right.
Does anyone have a problem with meeting on August the 19th to
I
complete
have
the
no problem
transportation
with it,
section?
but you guys might get a lot more done if I'm not on the meeting.
Well, I'm not going to be on the meeting because I'm going to be out of the country. So that's why I thought we chose September 9th, but I'm actually going to Phoenix to fly out, but I guess I could go early the next, I don't know.
Yeah.
I think that's why
I won't, I'll be
I
out of
won't be
town.
there.
Yeah, I'll be out of town on September 9th, but I can always zoom in.
Okay, so I'm going to do a quick survey here. Dave, can you make the 19th? John? That's a yes. Harriet, you said you could call in. Brian, can you make the 19th? Yes. Liz, can you make the 19th?
No.
Okay. Bernice?
No.
Evelyn?
Yes.
Sailor?
No.
Okay, so looks like we'd be one short, assuming Jim or one of our other members that isn't here this evening could make it. That would give us our quorum.
I think it's important for Liz to be there because she has a lot of information for questions.
Well, wait till you see that list. I'm saying. And hopefully we're going to get it back from those guys by next week that Melissa can do it. Hopefully.
All right,
Melissa,
let's repeat this. We're going to repeat that exercise one more time. We're going to move it one more week to the right. So as opposed to the 19th, we're now talking about August 26th. Dave? John?
Yeah, I can do that, but I'd much rather have it the week before.
I understand. It'll be a short, it'll be a mini meeting, hopefully. Harriet? 26th?
Yes.
Okay, Brian?
Yes.
Liz?
I'm still out of the country.
Oh, so it doesn't gain us anything.
No.
All
The
right.
thing is, what I could do, we were going to go down to Phoenix 2 days earlier. I could see, because we're leaving Saturday and we were going to leave Thursday, so we could make sure we don't miss our flight, blah, 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 blah. But if you're going to be the 19th, I should be there. But Melissa, do you think that other list, because you can handle this, you know my thoughts on all this. Do you think that other list will be completed by next week? Since we've been wanting it for a while and they've been kind of busy? What do you think, Melissa?
I don't want to speak for other people. I think it's
Dave said
possible.
goodbye. Okay, Dave said goodbye because I saw a
Dave
little.
already left.
I think though that the other thing to consider is that's one aspect of this chapter, which is one chapter in the entire plan. And honestly, those specific projects we could
put an addendum, and they might vote for it anyway. Yeah.
I mean, they could be looked at later, you know, but this is a great opportunity, so we could certainly work toward it.
Okay.
It may not just be as important as the policies, if that makes sense. It's
So what we're
important,
going-
but it may be able to be looked at as a separate ask for the committee and the community to look at those as an addendum or as a text.
But if I'm not here, could you still show them that list and say, yes,
Oh, yeah.
I just don't want them to be left behind. It's just too important.
Okay, so
And I just had a message that there's a flood summit
saw that.
scheduled
We
on the
don't-
26th.
that's-
Okay.
Yeah, that's separate. The 26th, there's no benefit in doing that. We don't
Right.
gain anything by doing that. So we're back to the 19th. I think what I'm going to propose is our next meeting will be next Thursday,
Yep.
August 19th, beginning at 6 p.m. since it's a mini meeting.
Yep.
To better facilitate public input and comment. We will we'll do a survey of our members. Melissa hopefully can help us with that to ensure that we will have a quorum before we commit to it, but that is the current plan. And that
Yeah.
will support completing this section and allow us on the 9th of September to have our final meeting before the open house. Any objections to that plan?
If we don't
Sorry,
get,
what time on the 19th? I'm sorry.
6 p.m., 1800.
Thank you.
What about between the 26th and the 9th? Is there a possibility of having one then so Liz could be there?
I'll be back on the 7th of September.
No.
Okay.
After she provided that input, the answer obviously is no.
Okay. Well, Melissa knows all this stuff. I mean, she was right there.
Well,
She
and
wiped
Melissa
my nose.
And there's a good chance Dave and other folks will also be here too. So, it's their list.
Right.
I think we'll have plenty of expertise available.
And
so that's the current plan moving forward for the schedule.
And the thing is, if I can talk my beloved into just not going, anyway, I'll try to do the 19th. If you miss a plane to Iceland, it's hard to just jump on another one because there aren't that many planes going there. So I can't.
Go early on the 19th down to Phoenix and join us from your hotel room down there.
You know what? That could be possible. Duh! I forgot great technology.
Okay.
Iceland's on the list of like very few places that they're saying don't go, and here you are running off. Crazy lady, you better just stay here and be safe with us.
All right, we're gonna move on from Iceland to the next slide here, please.
Rob, before that, could I just make one request before we go to the next slide? And that would be if there are any committee members who would like to form a subcommittee to help plan for the open house and review things like postcard materials, things like that. That might be very helpful.
This is Brian. I'll volunteer.
Thanks,
and
Brian.
anyone else that would like to volunteer is encouraged to please email Melissa with that information so that she can put together that subcommittee.
Yes, this is Liz. I'll volunteer and I come back after the 7th. If I come back, yeah.
Or work via email or.
Yeah, sure.
All right. Thank you, Melissa and Brian and Liz. We're going to move on to public comment. So all of those of you that have stuck with us through this entire process, we very much value your inputs to making our plan as good as it can possibly be. So if there are any members of the public that at this time would like to share any thoughts with us, we would like to ask you to unmute and introduce yourself and share that thought.
Hi, everybody. I'm Sheila Walsh. Been a Doney Park resident, owner for 37 years. On the initial slides that Melissa put up, the objectives for the evening, she referred to this multimodal transportation as a plan, and it said Doney Park, Fernwood, and Timberline and Fernwood. And actually the title on the final document is the Doney Park Multimodal Transportation Study. I don't know what the difference is between a study and a plan. I have the original draft in 2010 when it got started, and the 1.3 under study objectives, all of the objectives were defined. In the final product under 1.3, the study objectives are listed or numbered, but they're not defined. And I really like the definitions of the 2010 original draft that said there are 5 listed below types of on-street improvements that may be considered in the Doney Park area that will improve conditions for bicyclists and pedestrians. And one is improved widened shoulders. Number 2 is pavement width reallocation. That means lane narrowing. Number 3, sidewalks, 4 multi-use pathways, 5 pedestrian crossings. And on page 19 of the final study from November of 2011, the map doesn't even have Fernwood listed on it. It's not depicted at all. All of this study is putting almost 20 miles of pavement in Doney Park, not anywhere else, and that's my opposition to it. So I really pray that this isn't taken off the shelf, dusted off, and developed without being re-studied and written and obtaining new public input. I want a copy of what was listed on the original slide of the 2021 new multimodal trails and transit map. If there's one available, I'd like to know where to get that. I loved TC20, adopt a trail idea. I really like TC 21 utility easements where they're appropriate and feasible and agreeable with the property owners. Trails are really important, but safety is more important and critical in any study or plan. I was unfortunate enough to observe the wreckage on our Highway 89 that last Sunday morning. And I'm just really freaked out at the idea of having about 20 miles of pavement put through my neighborhood when there's that type of drivers in this world. It's not going to be safe, and that's been my objection from the get-go. The 1988 area plan for our area, sorry, I didn't turn my video on, recommended that we have a multimodal trail going into town along the railroad. And I thought, for commuters that want to ride their bike, what a great idea. That track goes straight into town. And I don't know why that isn't in subsequent plans. And that's all I have to share. Thank you for letting me talk, and congratulations, Mr. Ruggles. And thank you, Dave, for being at every single meeting on this area plan. It means a lot that we're all working on this together, and I appreciate the dedication of all of you guys.
Thank you, Sheila. Very much value that input, and we'll keep that in mind as we move forward through this. Any other members of the general public that would like to share a thought with us yet this evening? Feel free to unmute and share your thoughts with us, please. Russell.
Yeah, Ross. Russell Weedman, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, earlier when you were talking about TC19, you were asking about benefits, or someone was asking about benefits to developers and private property owners to put in an easement to forest land. And if there are more than one parcel of land, it is a benefit because it raises property values having access to forest land. And I don't think you can really have access onto forest land. I could be wrong about this, but you can provide access to forest land, and then the Forest Service is the only government agency that it can actually provide the access onto forest land. And what happened with the Brandis property when it was split recently, 4 or 5 years ago, a non-motorized vehicle access was put into the plan almost from Highway 89, probably quite a ways, over 1,000 feet up to forest land. And, so that in the future, if the Forest Service, if a trail could be put in there, that would be an access point for the property owners in that area to get onto forest land. But actually going onto forest land, I think the Forest Service has to give access. If I'm wrong about that, I'd like to know that, and I think it has to be kept in mind that every private property doesn't automatically have access to forest land just because they border it. So anyway, thanks to everybody that's done all the work on the committee, and thanks to Bernice and Liz for voicing the concerns of the public. And I hope that the results of the survey will be reflected in the area plan when it's done. So, thank you very much.
Thank you, Russell. Appreciate your thoughts. Any other members of the general public that would like to share something with us this evening? I'm waiting especially long for you, Bernice. I don't see anyone else, so we're going to move on to committee final thoughts. Anyone on the committee have any final thoughts they'd like to share with us yet this evening?
Yes, Rob, I a couple of things. One, I think we had a very good meeting this evening. And two, I'm going to address Supervisor Vasquez's comments, and also at the same time the memo essentially that came from our Director of Community Development relative to language. I know the background on this. The resolution that was expressed in Jay's memo to us was resolved at the Board of Supervisors level. Beyond that, I can say no more. Simply say it is privileged information because of the way it was done. The other thing that I think we are in the process of moving beyond intimidation and misinformation that has directed a lot of the discussion we have had about such things during the progress of this committee. I think we are beyond that at this point, and we are beyond it successfully, I hope. But I had to say something about it, because I am not someone who is intimidated easily, nor am I going to direct my opinions and my thoughts based on misinformation that has been put out in public. That being said, I think it is quite enough at this point.
Thank you, John. I appreciate your thoughts. Other members of the committee that would like to share any thoughts before we wrap up this evening?
This is Bernice. I'd just like to thank Russell Weedman and say that I appreciate him saying that this document, I also hope that it reflects the opinions of the public that responded to the survey, which seem really similar to the survey back in the 2001 plan. And I just, want to do everything we can to preserve our properties and preserve the rural character of this area. That's it.
Thank you, Bernice. And if that wraps up all the committee comments, I believe that we can draw this meeting to a conclusion and call it adjourned. So thank you all very much for your participation this evening. We look forward to seeing you in a week to do this some more.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Have fun, Liz. Bye.
Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you.